The sitting is open. Good morning, dear colleagues. The first item of business this morning is a debate under urgent procedure on Russia, new threats to European democracies, document 16-272, presented by Mr. Julian Boulay, the leader of the ALDE group, on behalf of the Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy. In order to finish by 11 a.m., I will interrupt the list of speakers at about 10:50 to allow time for the reply and the vote. I hope that we will be able to allow all members to speak on both debates this morning, but that will depend on members keeping to time. I call Mr. Boulay rapporteur. Dear Julian, you know that you have 7 minutes now and 3 minutes at the end to reply.
Thank you so much, dear President. Good morning, colleagues. I'm very honored to open this debate today at what is, no doubt, a critical moment for Europe's democratic security. Yes, it is not the first time this Assembly has gathered to address the Russian threat. Our Ukrainian friends and colleagues can tell it better. They also know that current threats build upon a long history of repeated and extensive violations of international law by Russia. My own country, Romania, also knows from history. Today, in Romania, Russian interference is grimly familiar reality. Yet, now, we must fully grasp the magnitude of today's challenge for all of us, because at level, scope, and ambition of Russia's assault on our democracy and on all of us in Europe is without precedent. What is new now? First, the intensification of Russia's full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine. Recent months have seen relentless missiles and drones attacks on Ukrainian cities, infrastructure, and civilians, with devastating loss of lives. These attacks have not spared residential and diplomatic areas in Kiev, nor have they respected any boundaries or decency or law. We have also confronted intentional, unacceptable incursions into the airspace of European member states, most recently in Estonia, Poland, and Romania, reminding us that Russia knows no border and that no corner of our continent is immune. In addition, we bear witness to an unprecedented intensification of hybrid warfare. Russia's assault has extended directly into our own democratic processes. Russia's warfare in recent elections in Romania and the Republic of Moldova showcased sophisticated foreign interference and information warfare, bomb threats, mass disinformation, online manipulation, TikTok manipulation, and attempts to derail the pro-European course of foreign nations. These are no longer isolated events, but part of a strategic campaign to weaken us from within. What is also chilling is Russia's definition of warfare. Russia now wields not only arms, but also the tools of destabilization, weaponizing migration, seeking to deepen divides within our societies, portraying our values as Western and wrong, and leveraging its diplomatic machinery worldwide to forge alliances with other authoritarian forces. Colleagues, these are no theoretical risks. Russia's hybrid and military threats, its campaign of disinformation, is attacking our democratic security. Russia's goal is clear: to destabilize, divide, polarize, spread fear, and ultimately undermine the values of systems that we have bound Europe together since the end of the Second World War. This is why we must take a clear, firm stance. Russia must be opposed and ultimately defeated. What shall we do? That's the question. First, we fight for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. Ukraine's resistance is about the security of the entire European continent. Our commitment must not waver. Justice also demands full accountability for war crimes of aggression and for crimes of aggression and war crimes. This means supporting the establishment and implementation of new mechanisms. The Special Tribunal for Crimes of Aggression, the International Claims Commission, and reparation frameworks, so that impunity cannot thrive. As parliamentarians, We must harness parliamentary diplomacy to mobilize our societies and support this accountability process. Second, we must increase the pressure on Russia through tougher, better coordinated sanctions. Russian diplomatic isolation must also be extended to every field, including sports, to deny Moscow the legitimacy it seeks on the international stage. In the face of hybrid warfare, we must bolster deterrence, preparedness, protection, and reactivity. Only through collective responses, tightening laws against election interferences, and deploying solid counter-narratives to Russian propaganda, we will build resilience. We must also continue in the Council of Europe, in this Assembly, to anchor for democratic values. We must do more to challenge the Russian narratives that seek to undermine not just our institutions, but the very belief in democracy and our values. And dear colleagues, 2075 years ago, the Roman statesman Cicero in the Roman Senate said the following things, a very tough question that remained in history. Quusque tantem abutere Catilina patientia nostra. Now, in this assembly, we have to ask each other, for how long time will we allow Mr. Putin to play with our patience? And the answer of this question should be with us every day until Ukraine wins the war. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Julian. I open now the list of speakers on behalf of the political groups, and I call Inger Schau to speak on behalf of the European People's Party. Inger, you have the floor.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Mr. Bulai, for presenting this important draft resolution. The threats we experience from Russia against our democracies are increasing in number, and they are increasingly creative. The threats are not only military, but there are a variety of hybrid threats that interfere with our democratic way of life. One of the recent examples is how strings appears to have been pulled so that Latvia might have a government crisis. It seems as if disinformation and interference has led to a proposal to reverse the ratification of the Istanbul Convention has been tabled in the Latvian parliament. The parties tabling these proposals seems to have fallen for Russian disinformation campaigns against the Istanbul Convention. And President, the current situation in Europe is such that we must be even more vigilant and alert. The number of police-reported incidents on threats against critical infrastructure is increasing. In the last couple of weeks, there have been drone incidents in Poland, Denmark, and Norway. Only last week, this resulted in airports in Denmark and Norway being closed. We must take this seriously, and we must work together and support each other. How Norway and other countries are assisting Denmark this week during the EU and EPC summits after the drone disruptions last week is a good example. Other threats we have been confronted with in Norway are cyber attacks and the jamming of GPS signals along our coast and in the Baltic Sea. The Shadow Fleet represent a great threat to the environment at the same time as it is undermining the sanction regime. And President, on behalf of the EPP Group, I urge all members of the Assembly to vote in favor for Mr. Bulai's draft resolution. We must stand united against these growing threats against our democracy. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Inger. Lord Richard Keane on behalf of the European Conservatives, Patriots and Affiliates. Richard, you have the floor.
President, colleagues, I congratulate Julian Ballou on his excellent presentation. At the end of this resolution, it's observed that matters of defense fall out with our remit. That may be strictly correct in a military sense, but this Assembly is concerned with the defense of democracy, the defense of human rights, the defense of peace, defense of the right to self-determination. Colleagues, in 1962, the then US Secretary of State, Dean Acheson, observed that Great Britain had lost an empire and not found a role. Today, we can say that Russia has lost the Soviet empire and not found a legitimate role. Russia has responded by lashing out at its neighbors, and its true weakness is exposed by the friends that it now keeps: Belarus, North Korea, and Iran, and by its subservience to China. All of these authoritarian regimes that would attack democracy and our tradition of human rights. We're menaced by Russia in many forms, but tragically, the front line in all of this is the aggression in Ukraine. If Russia succeeds in Ukraine, it will turn on others like a crazed and starving bear. And whether we wish it or not, Ukraine's defense has become our defense, the defense of our democracy, the defense of our human dignity. We must ensure that this ends not with a new Russian empire, but a realization that the independent democracies around Russia will ultimately prevail. And we must be prepared to do all that is in our power to secure. Failure will lead us all into a new dark age.
Thank you, Richard. On behalf of the ALDE Group, Eric Niels Cross. Eric, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, thank you, Julian, for bringing up this topic. It's obviously important for all of us. We from the Baltic states have been puzzled a little bit how Europe is struggling with the Russian threat, as if it's something new. It's nothing new. It has been around for a very long time. Maybe we are just a little bit more aware of it now. So what should we do about it? My father had a very simple and clear teaching about it. He spent 9 years in the Gulag, had a lot of experience with the Russian threat. And he said, when you're thrown, not if, when you're thrown into a Russian prison cell, there will be a thug that comes to you and gives you a broom and tells you, clean the floor. And that's a defining moment. You either accept the broom and start to clean the floor, and then you will become their slave, or you punch him in the face. And then he will leave you alone, because bullies are always afraid of a proper response. And today, I think Russia has put Europe mentally in this prison cell, and every week it gives us a broom, and every week we have to decide, do we accept it or do we push back? So there are constant cyber attacks, airspace violations, assassination attempts, sabotage attempts, explosions in Europe. What have we done? We talk about more resilience. We condemn, we have nice resolutions, but we don't push back. So until we decide to push back, those attacks will continue, and it's actually up to us if we want to be free of this or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. On behalf of the United European Left, Ettore Antonio Licheri. It's Licheri or Licheri, Antonio?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. La Russia è un regime liberticida. In Russia anche l'informazione è prigioniera di un governo assolutista e tanti giornalisti e politici di opposizione hanno pagato con la vita le loro idee. La Russia ha violato le più elementari norme del diritto umanitario e del diritto internazionale. Unanime e convinta è stata dunque la decisione di allontanare la Federazione russa da questa nostra assemblea che è culla del diritto europeo. L'Europa non potrà mai tollerare una violazione del principio di sovranità nazionale, perché il rispetto delle sovranità nazionali è il primo pilastro delle nostre democrazie. Sappiamo però che, oltre alla criminale invasione dell'Ucraina, la Russia sta provando ad aggredire la coesione sociale dei nostri Stati e lo fa influenzando e orientando le nostre opinioni pubbliche. È innegabile il suo tentativo di erodere i nostri processi democratici, facendo leva sul malcontento e sulla sofferenza delle nostre classi sociali più deboli. È parere di chi parla che davanti a questa minaccia la migliore risposta non possa arrivare dalla politica del riarmo e solo dalla politica del riarmo. Spendere 800 miliardi di euro in più per acquistare armi, aumentare al 5% il contributo NATO, nella piena consapevolezza che per reperire questi soldi dovremo fare debito sui nostri bilanci nazionali, sarà un errore politico. Sappiamo che ogni euro che dovremo spendere in più in armi sarà un euro tolto alla sanità, alla scuola, al welfare, e tutto questo genererà protesta, rabbia, malcontento, delusione nelle nostre periferie, alimentando in questo modo il cancro dei nazionalismi di cui si nutre il pensiero russo. Convertire le nostre economie sociali in economie di guerra significherà cadere nella trappola di Putin. Per rafforzare le nostre democrazie davanti alla minaccia russa serve investire nella vita, nel benessere dei nostri cittadini e nello sviluppo ecosostenibile. Se vuoi la pace, ho concluso. Prepara la pace. Grazie.
Thank you, Ettore Antonio. On behalf of the Socialist, Greens and Democrats, Piero Fassino. Piero, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am going to speak to Italian. Ringrazio il collega Bulai per l'ottima relazione che ci ha presentato, che indica il salto drammatico di qualità a cui noi siamo di fronte. L'aggressione russa ormai si estende a nuovi settori che vanno ben al di là soltanto della guerreggiata. I bombardamenti sulle città ucraine hanno conosciuto un'intensificazione enorme che da molto tempo Kiev e le altre città non conoscevano, con un carico di devastazioni, di lutti, di sofferenze enorme. C'è un ammassamento al confine tra Ucraina e Russia di truppe russe in vista di una possibile nuova offensiva per conquistare nuovo territorio ucraino. C'è una interruzione seria e preoccupante delle riforniture energetiche, sia sulla centrale di Zaporizhzhia sia sulla centrale di Chernobyl, con il rischio che l'Ucraina non sia in grado di garantire quell'approvvigionamento energetico in un inverno che è assolutamente essenziale per la quotidianità di vita di milioni di persone. E c'è una estensione del conflitto alla violazione degli spazi aerei di molti paesi, la Romania, la Polonia, i Balcani, la Norvegia, la Danimarca, in una chiara opera di intimidazione nei confronti dei paesi che sostengono l'Ucraina. E a questo si aggiunge, come ha ricordato bene Bulai, l'intensificazione degli strumenti di guerra ibrida, lo abbiamo visto per le elezioni della Moldavia, per le elezioni della Romania. Di fronte a tutto questo è chiaro qual è l'obiettivo di Putin: piegare l'Ucraina e costringerla a una resa senza condizioni, e quindi Putin sta cercando una vittoria militare e tutto quello che sta facendo va in questa direzione. Per questo noi dobbiamo sostenere senza se e senza ma l'Ucraina, sostenere le forze di opposizione russa come quelle che abbiamo ieri accolto nel nostro Consiglio e dare fino in fondo attuazione al piano di azione e alle iniziative che il Consiglio d'Europa ha assunto, in particolare il Tribunale contro i crimini e il registro dei danni e dei risarcimenti a chi ha subito queste sofferenze. Grazie.
Thank you, Piero. Thank you. Peran Mon is next.
Muraz, thank you, Mr. President. For 3.5 years now, Europe has seen a tyrannical and destructive force engage in a full-scale invasion of one of its neighbouring states. As Ukraine continues to stand resolutely against this unprovoked aggression, democracies across this continent are being undermined by another form of warfare. In Georgia, Russia mounts a dark war, using Russian-backed oligarchs to fund the infiltration of political institutions and control the media, tightening their vice-like grip on democracy by shutting down civil society, imprisoning those that dare show even the slightest dissent, and finally, perhaps most shamefully of all, brainwashing Georgian children into believing that theirs is the only hope and that democracy is evil. The territorial security and institutional integrity of Europe itself is now at the gravest of risks. Although we are in a position of combined strength through our various alliances and our commitment to democratic values, the enemy at the door can only be defeated through a clear and united front. Earlier this month, the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper commended the resolute and firm response of Estonia, Poland and Romania, indeed all NATO allies, against the Russian threat. At this moment of extreme provocation, NATO countries should not shy away from reminding Putin and his associates of Article 5, the cornerstone of the NATO alliance. An attack on one is an attack on all. Russia's foreign ministry has claimed that the country has no intention of attacking EU and NATO member states, but we all know comforting words from Moscow are like candles in the wind. If Putin is looking to test our resolve, we must demonstrate our collective commitment to increasing pressure, implementing sanctions, funding our allies until he withdraws from the whole of Ukraine, returns the children despicably deported to Russia, and ceases his reckless provocation and political interference within other neighbouring states. We cannot and will not stand idly by. Please vote in favour of this resolution today.
Thank you, Peran. Marian Stroh is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Bulai, for your draft resolution. Russia's aggression goes far beyond Ukraine. Through drones, cyber attacks, disinformation, and hidden financing, it tries to destabilize all of Europe. We have seen missiles hitting schools and homes in Ukraine, but also drones entering NATO airspace, including also my country, Romania. Let me be clear. Romania will defend its territory. From now on, any drone that crosses our skies will be stopped and destroyed. This is our sovereign right and our duty as a NATO member. Russia has also changed the rules of war. It uses migration, culture, and disinformation as weapons. It has interfered in the elections in Moldova, Poland, and even tried to manipulate elections in Romania. This is not normal politics. It is hybrid war against our democracies. But Europe has to stay firm. Ukraine has shown great courage. Our societies must stay strong, and NATO solidarity has never been greater. Membership in this alliance is not a luxury. It is our shield. That is why our response must be unity, sanctions must be tougher, accountability must move forward, and our resilience, digital, civic, and military, must grow stronger. Russia's weapons are force, fear, and interference. Ours must be the law, the freedom, and the lasting peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Marian. Claude Kern, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mes chers collègues, ces derniers mois, en dépit d'une cynique apparence d'ouverture en direction des États-Unis, la Russie a intensifié sa guerre d'agression contre l'Ukraine en ciblant davantage d'installations civiles. En parallèle, elle a multiplié les provocations à l'égard d'États membres de notre organisation et de l'Union européenne, qui ont fait face à des attaques hybrides, à des incursions de drones non identifiés et d'avions militaires russes dans leur espace aérien. Alors que la France a arraisonné hier un bâtiment de la flotte fantôme russe, le président de la République française a estimé que nous étions aujourd'hui dans une confrontation avec la Russie. Le chancelier allemand a de son côté affirmé que nous ne sommes pas en guerre, mais nous ne sommes plus en paix. Les États membres de notre organisation doivent prendre pleinement conscience de la menace que représente la Russie aujourd'hui et renforcer leurs capacités militaires. L'Europe doit pouvoir assurer sa sécurité, que ce soit dans le cadre d'une solidarité euro-atlantique ou par elle-même, en toute indépendance. Au-delà de ces provocations, la Russie tente de manière continue de déstabiliser nos démocraties en influant sur les processus électoraux. Les campagnes de désinformation, l'achat de voix et les cyberattaques sont autant de méthodes utilisées pour essayer d'influer sur les résultats des scrutins. On l'a encore vu récemment, notamment lors de l'élection présidentielle en Roumanie et des élections législatives en Moldavie. Notre Assemblée a travaillé depuis plusieurs années sur ces enjeux et formulé des propositions fortes. Il nous faut les mettre en œuvre sans nous laisser intimider par la Russie. Défendre les valeurs démocratiques, ce n'est pas un gage de faiblesse, c'est une force. Nous devons l'affirmer avec fermeté. Je voterai donc l'excellent projet de résolution qui nous est présenté par notre collègue Julian Boulay, que je remercie.
Thank you, Claude. Martinas Getvilas is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues. Russia's aggression is not only against Ukraine, it is a direct threat to Europe's democracy. The report shows this clearly. Airspace violation in Estonia, Poland, Romania, and also in my own country, Lithuania. Unidentified drones and Russian aircrafts enter our skies, often near critical infrastructure. These are not accidents. They are deliberate provocation to test our action and to measure our unity. At the same time, Russia escalates cyber attacks, spreads disinformation, and interferes in elections, as we saw in Moldova and Poland. It uses propaganda, oligarch money, and alliance with regimes like Belarus, Iran, and North Korea. This is not just war against Ukraine. It's a broad strategy to destabilize all of Europe. Our response must be unity and resilience. We must stand firmly with Ukraine, protect our election, fight lies with truth, punish war crimes, and strengthen sanctions. Dear colleagues, Russia uses fear and lies to weaken democracy. Our answer must be solidarity, strength, and truth. Only then will Europe remain free and secure. Thank you.
Thank you, Martinez. Carmen Leite. Carmen, you have the floor.
Gracias, presidente. Empiezo felicitando al ponente por este report que responde a una llamada urgente ante la situación creada por Rusia, tras su estrategia de desestabilización de las democracias europeas, no solo mediante la agresión militar en Ucrania, sino a través de tácticas híbridas que incluyen ciberataques, a campañas de desinformación, injerencia electoral y presión sobre comunidades vulnerables. En los últimos meses hemos sido testigos de violaciones deliberadas del espacio aéreo de países como Estonia, Polonia y Rumanía, provocaciones que buscan medir la cohesión europea y debilitar la solidaridad con Ucrania. A esto se suma una sofisticada campaña de interferencia en procesos electorales, como se evidenció en las elecciones de Moldavia y Rumanía, donde se utilizaron redes de manipulación digital y amenazas directas a centros de votación, como ya se ha denunciado en esta Asamblea. Estas acciones no son aisladas, forman parte de un patrón sistemático que busca erosionar la confianza ciudadana, polarizar nuestras sociedades y debilitar la cohesión europea. Como parlamentarios tenemos la responsabilidad de fortalecer la resiliencia democrática. Esto implica reforzar la legislación contra la injerencia extranjera y la manipulación informativa, proteger la integridad de nuestros procesos electorales, garantizar que los crímenes cometidos en Ucrania no queden impunes, promover una narrativa común que defienda los valores democráticos frente a la propaganda autoritaria. La seguridad democrática no se defiende solo con armas, sino con instituciones sólidas, ciudadanía informada y cooperación parlamentaria. Este informe nos recuerda que la defensa de la democracia exige unidad y firmeza frente a la desinformación y el miedo. No podemos permitir que el uso de la fuerza, el chantaje informativo y la manipulación electoral se conviertan en herramientas legítimas de influencia internacional. Defender la democracia es defender la paz, la libertad y el futuro de Europa. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Carmen. Evgenia Kravchuk. Evgenia, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. I would like to thank Julian Bulai for bringing this extremely important debate and resolution to this Assembly. In 2 minutes to explain Russian threats, it's quite a challenge, but I'll try. And I want to bring you to the 24th of November, 2015. Russian Su-24 violated Turkish airspace. It was taken down in 5 minutes. In 5 minutes. Do you know how many times Russian planes violated airspace of Turkey? None. So that just gives a lesson not to be afraid and punch a bully, as Eric said, to his nose. And we can do it if we are united, if we have a plan. And we often speak about some security guarantees for Ukraine. But I want to speak what security can bring Ukraine to Europe. Because Ukraine is right now a shield of Europe. We have the biggest, most trained in combat army. We have the best technologies in drones, in jamming machines. It's being developed right now in many enterprises in Ukraine, and you could cooperate with Ukrainians. You could come and send your troops, or our troops will come to the trainings and train how to take down these drones. Because it doesn't make sense to take down a drone with a missile that costs €1 million. It's just the different type of threat. And of course, hybrid threats. Ukraine had been experiencing disinformation and cyber threats for years, and we coped with it. We learned how to fight it. So we're saying that we can help you, we can give our practice and our knowledge to be resilient to Russian threats and to any threats from any autocracies around the world to keep democracy alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Evgenia. Ardit Bido is next.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, I thank the rapporteur, Mr. Bulai, for a powerful report. He is right to warn us. Russia has rewritten the concept of weaponry. This is no longer about missiles and tanks only. It is about the weaponization of migration, of information, of democracy itself. Missiles destroy schools. Disinformation destroys societies. Every drone that violates European airspace is a test of our unity. Every fake news campaign is a bullet aimed at our citizens' trust. The Balkans know this danger too well. If the Balkans are destabilized, Europe is weakened. If the Balkans stand resilient, Europe stands unbreakable. That resilience is our common shield. And Albania has demonstrated what leadership means in this fight. We have been among the promoters of solidarity with Ukraine, authoring and co-sponsoring United Nations resolutions, hosting the Western Balkans Ukraine Summit, and providing that small nations can stand tall when defending freedom. As a people, we Albanians have felt in our history the pain of consequences of aggression, from the expulsion of the former Albanian minority in northern Greece to the persecution of Albanians in Kosovo. But, Mr. President, there is an open wound in this Council. More than 2 million Europeans, citizens of the Republic of Kosovo, remain excluded from the safeguards of the Council of Europe. The delay in the accession of the Republic of Kosovo is unacceptable, unjust and dangerous, and it leaves free ground to Russian interests. As long as this Council is home to democratic countries, it must open its doors to the Republic of Kosovo without delay. This is not a concession, this is justice. This is Europe standing whole. Democratic security is Europe's security. And from Baltic to the Balkans, from Brussels to Kyiv, from Tirana and Pristina to Strasbourg, let our voice ring. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Ardit. Sergei Sobolev. Sergei.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. When in 2008, Georgian delegation here announced that next will be Ukrainian Crimea, nobody believed this. But only 6 years has already passed, and Russians occupy Crimea, a part of Donbass and Lugansk. Only 6 years passed after so-called Minsk agreements, and Russia started new full-scale invasion to Ukraine. On the words of Putin only a week before this, that we will never, never send our troops to Ukraine. Now, drone attacks to other European countries. We can't even believe that from 20 drones that Russians shoot to Poland, only 4 were destroyed. It's a very dangerous situation when European countries are not prepared for these threats. But now I want to speak about other nuclear threats. This night and previous evening were the most dangerous. We were before the second tragedy in Chernobyl. 9 hours, it was a full, I want to stress, full, no electricity supply for Chernobyl nuclear power station, because the Russians totally destroyed energy supply for this nuclear power station. Only a week ago, Russians totally destroyed the only one line that supplies Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station. And now they have only 1 day support of generators. So I think it's very dangerous. It's the opening of new nuclear front against not only Ukraine, but whole Europe. Be prepared for this, as we prepared now in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergei. And now it's the turn of Selby Cramp-Neumann from Canada.
Colleagues, based on recent events, it would seem that President Putin's disdain for international law and the rules-based international order knows no bounds. In past weeks, we have seen significant ratcheting up of Russia's hybrid war against the European neighbors. September 9th and 10th, at least 19 Russian drones entered Polish airspace. September 13th, a Russian attack drone stayed in Romanian's airspace for nearly an hour. Just as blatantly on September 19th, 3 Russian fighter jets entered and remained in Estonian airspace above the Gulf of Finland for 12 minutes. I hope this entire assembly would concur with NATO's damning conclusion of September 23rd that Russia bears full responsibility for these actions, which are escalatory, risk miscalculation, and endanger lives. They must stop. All of which begs the question, who will be next in Russia's crosshairs? Whose borders and airspace will next be violated by Russian warplanes and unmanned drones? Whose national sovereignty is now at risk? Despite these challenges, it merits recalling President Vladimir Zelensky's address to this very chamber of June 25th, 2025. He reminded all of us, you are much stronger than Russia. Repeat it every day. Canada continues to pledge our unwavering support to Ukraine and her people. Moscow's unprovoked and unjust actions must be condemned at every opportunity. It is a stain on the recent history of this great continent and serves as a stark reminder to the world that the lessons learned during the great wars that scarred our collective histories cannot and must not be forgotten. Our commitment to our constituents begins with the state fulfilling its first and most important role, the protection of our people. I urge member states who rely on naive, outdated concepts of universal multilateralism and diplomacy to face a stark reality. The enemies of the free world will not play by your rules. Expect the unexpected. Do not let the sacrifice of the heroic Ukrainian people go to waste. Collectively, we are stronger.
Thank you. Now it is Oleksiy Goncharenko. Oleksiy? Yeah. You have the floor.
Thank you. Dear President, dear colleagues, you know, I have a bad message for you, unfortunately. Everything will just worsen. And just please believe me, because I remember very good when just 5, 6, 7 years ago, when Russians were still here, and some of you wanted to take them back in the hemicycle, we're telling, we need dialogue with Russia. We need dialogue. I was just saying, dialogue doesn't work with them. No dialogue. They don't know this word. Please speak their language. No, you were not listening, many of you, and we took them back to this hemicycle. Then I was telling they will attack Ukraine with a full force. And you were just, some of you were laughing at me, saying, what?
tanks and missiles in the middle of Europe? You're kidding, you're crazy. What you are saying to us? Then February 24 came. Then I was telling to you, they will not stop by bombing with missiles and drones Ukraine. They will attack European countries. Again, you were laughing. No, wow, Russia will never attack NATO. They're not crazy. And day after day after day. Now you have Russian drones in Poland, in Romania. I hear we will shut down all the drones and missiles. But you are not. Putin is watching at all of this, and he is laughing at all of us. And every day more and more, shadow fleet. We were telling you, stop this shadow fleet. Now the shadow fleet is used to attack with drones already Baltic states. Believe me, they will go ahead. They will attack other countries and other airports. You want to know what you should do? Now, sink Russian shadow fleet. Stop it like France now did, finally. Do it right now. Seize Russian frozen assets. Don't speak about this. Seize it right now. Shut down Russian drones and missiles, not in your airspace, in our airspace. Don't let them a chance even to reach you. And if you will do this, then Putin will believe you are serious. If not, just stop laughing at him. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. Christophe Bricot. Christophe.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur Boulay, pour cet excellent rapport qui nous permet d'avoir cet important débat. Et puisque vous avez cité Cicéron, je vais commencer en citant Jules César. Si quis pacem parabellum, qui veut la paix se prépare à la guerre. Parce que c'est à ça que nous avons à faire face aujourd'hui, la guerre. Le mois de septembre, un mois. Des drones envolés au-dessus de la Roumanie, de la Pologne, du Danemark et de la Norvège. Des MiG-31 ont volé pendant 12 minutes dans l'espace aérien estonien. 12 minutes. C'est une éternité, particulièrement pour des appareils qui vont aussi vite. Alors, depuis 3 ans, nos collègues ukrainiens, qui sont notre ligne de défense, nous expliquent ce qui est en train d'arriver et nous voyons gentiment arriver, dans le cadre d'un exercice qui s'appelle Zapad 2025, les ambitions de la Russie. Zapad veut dire ouest en russe, pour ceux qui ne le sauraient pas. Les ambitions de la Russie. Nous avons face à nous un ogre qui n'aura pas de fin, et c'est un combat inégal. Nous défendons les démocraties, c'est une autocratie. Nous défendons les souverainetés des États. Ils pensent que c'est un empire qui n'a pas de frontières. Alors, un grand penseur allemand de la guerre, Karl von Clausewitz, disait que la guerre, c'est l'affrontement en grand des volontés. La question qui se pose aujourd'hui à nous, c'est quelle sera la nôtre de volonté. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Christophe. Maria Mezentseva-Fedorenko. Maria.
Thank you, dear President. Dear colleagues, I would like to thank, first of all political group leaders who initiated this brilliant file, and I don't know any other institution who can produce such resolution just in 48 hours. Thank you, Julian, for chairing this process, and we thank political committee today for accepting all the amendments. Colleagues, we still have time, and we still have a hope that our cooperation can bring us to the real, lasting, just peace. When we have seen our friends from Poland targeting Russian drones with Falcon 35, our hearts were crying, because this is too expensive and too ineffective. We really want to help you, dear European partners, to use the new warfare efficiently. And I'm talking about the President's initiative, the line of drones, which can sufficiently protect in the depths of 150 kilometers plus our security and defense using the drone warfare. Of course, air defense is sufficient. You see how daily Ukraine is being attacked, and mostly civilian objects in critical infrastructure is bombarded. Just recently in Sumy region, the whole family died. 2 small children, their parents, and 2 unborn children. So Russia today, as a terrorist state, is killing even unborn ones. With regards to the children, colleagues, please support our initiative to strengthen international humanitarian law and to make Geneva Conventions work. It's with regards to the deportations of Ukrainian children, bringing them back, civilians in captivity, and of course, prisoners of war. More sanctions, more strength, more united position, and more actions than words. Thank you so much. Let's act together.
Thank you, Maria. Colleagues, we have 5 more colleagues to take the floor. I have said that by 10:50 I will stop it, but I will ask all colleagues, I will try to give all the floor. I will kindly ask them if they can speak even less than 2 minutes so that we can all be listened. Thank you so much. Larissa Bilosi.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, je remercie tout d'abord le rapporteur, Monsieur Julian Bulay. Vous êtes un véritable ami de l'Ukraine et de l'Europe. Votre rapport est une voie de vérité et un appel à l'action. La Russie ne menace pas seulement l'Ukraine. Ces drones ont violé l'espace aérien de l'Estonie, de la Pologne, de la Roumanie, du Danemark. En réponse, l'Europe s'unit. Aujourd'hui, à Copenhague, nous voyons une répétition de l'article 5 de l'OTAN. 10 pays assurent la sécurité du forum. Des instructeurs ukrainiens apprennent aux soldats européens à abattre les drones. Et on prépare un mur de drones. Hier, les forces spéciales françaises ont arrêté un pétrolier russe de la flotte Fantôme utilisé pour lancer des drones contre le Danemark. Cet événement prouve que l'Europe ne parle plus seulement de sécurité, elle agit. Il y a aussi une autre vérité. Les sanctions sont importantes, mais les drones ukrainiens frappent encore plus fort la Russie. À l'heure actuelle, 38% de ces raffineries de pétrole étaient à arrêter. C'est la plus grande crise des carburants de son histoire. L'agression a un prix et ce prix augmente pour la Russie. Chers collègues, l'Europe doit répondre clairement par un soutien total à l'Ukraine, par la création des mécanismes de justice et de réparation avec les avoirs russes gelés, par le renforcement des sanctions, par la protection de nos démocraties contre la désinformation russe. La paix viendra quand l'Ukraine aura gagné et que la Russie sera punie pour ses crimes.
Thank you, Larissa.
Je vous remercie.
Jean-Philippe Libisky.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank the author of the report, Mr. Julian Bulay, for his work and the new threats that Russia poses to European democracies. The fact that our debate is taking place today under the urgent procedure shows how serious this situation is. As a Pole, I must stress that the situation is unprecedented. For the first time in more than 80 years, Poland and NATO member states have been directly attacked, forced by shoots down hostile flying objects over their territory. This clearly shows that Russia's war against Ukraine has consequences far beyond its borders. We welcome that today the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe openly recognized Russia as the main threat to the democratic security of our continent. For years, Central and Eastern European countries have warned against the Kremlin's aggressive policy. Sadly, we are often alone in this view. Today, almost all of Europe shares the concerns we voiced a decade ago. This is why we cannot afford any more deals. Europe must quickly make up for lost time by remaining and strengthening our defense capabilities. Only then will we be able to repeal Russian aggression and move together toward a lasting and just peace in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean-Philippe. Yuri Kamelchuk. Is Yuri in the hemicycle? So I go on with Patrick Jaskulski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear Council of Europe, the Europe is under the pressure. Russian war against Ukraine and hybrid attacks seek to divide us and erode trust in democracy. Our answer is unity. We stand with the Ukraine until a just and lasting peace, rooted in international law, security, and accountability. War crimes and the crime of aggression must be punished. Frozen assets should pay for damages. This is justice, not revenge. We must secure our domestic front, close sanctions loopholes, and track dirty money, defend elections from foreign funds, ensure transparent media ownership, invest in cybersecurity and critical infrastructure, combat disinformation with truth, support independent media, provide clear facts, work together across the borders, respond strongly to airspace violations, cyber attacks, and other provocations. Together, we choose truth over propaganda, law over the violence, and freedom over the fear. Unity is our strategy. That's why I'm going to vote for the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And the last speaker is Markus Wissel. Markus.
Thank you, Mr. President. Friends and colleagues, today we stand at the crossroads for Europe's future. At the same time as we witness the Russian current barbarity, we see what the Russian perpetrators are preparing for. And this is why the free world needs to be ready to defend our democracies from the cold winds of ruthless authoritarian oppression. Russia's continued provocations and unacceptable behavior extends far beyond Ukraine's borders. Through airspace violations in Estonia, Poland, Romania, Denmark, and Germany, through cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and electoral interference in Moldova, Romania, and Poland. Russia seeks to sow chaos, divide us, and erode our democracies. They weaponize migration, culture, and even language to destabilize our societies while forging alliances with rogue states such as Belarus, Iran, North Korea, to evade sanctions and prolong their tyranny. Dear friends, Ukraine's heroic resilience inspires us all. Their people have defended their country against overwhelming odds, choosing a pro-European path despite threats and manipulation. We affirm Ukraine's right to shape its own future and secure lasting peace anchored in fundamental European values of democracy and justice. Let us bolster support for Ukraine's recovery, expedite accountability through the special tribunal and reparation from frozen Russian assets, and tighten sanctions targeting their shadow fleets, banks, supply chains to starve this regime of resources. Europe's security demands unity, stronger countermeasures against hybrid threats, robust counter-narratives to Russian propaganda, and enhanced democratic resilience. Russia must be isolated, held accountable, and defeated, not appeased. Ukraine's victory is Europe's victory. Let us act now with unwavering resolve to safeguard our peaceful democratic continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Markus. That concludes the list of speakers, and I now call the leader of the ALDE group and rapporteur, Mr. Julian Boulay, to reply. Dear Julian, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, President. I really appreciate us speaking until the end of the list because it's so important. Look how many people are united today speaking with one voice against the Russian aggression of all its forms in Europe. It's fantastic. Thank you. Lord Keane, I'm very happy that you spoke on behalf of the Conservatives because when speaking about the Russian interventions, intrusions into the Moldovan, Romanian election, we have to go back to 2016 when Russians were involved in Brexit. So what happens now is not out of the blue. Russians have an experience in making us less united. Ukraine attacked. Moldova and Romania attacked in terms of interventions and manipulations around elections. Poland, Baltic countries attacked by Russian drones and jets. Suspicious activity in Denmark, Norway, and also northern Germany. Who have imagined that? That is unacceptable. This House has to be very clear that we at European level, and here we should coordinate with European Parliament, ask the member countries have legislation immediately in place in order to down Russian drones. We cannot accept these provocations and be silent in front of the crimes of Mr. Putin. Adesso volevo parlare con lei, il signore d'Italia. I partigiani italiani, lottando contro i nazisti, non hanno fatto questa cosa senza cose concrete, non solamente discorsi sulla pace, senza avere cose nelle mani. C'è questa cosa che io volevo dire. Non vogliamo cose complici, ma ci vogliamo un po' più di empatia da questo gruppo per quelli che sono nell'Europa adesso, che sono minacciati ogni giorno di questo tipo di aggressione. Grazie. Now, I look at the Canadian colleague. I'm very happy that you look at us probably from above and you see so much fear in this house. This is what I could feel out of your speech, that you see that we are afraid but not yet capable of acting together. Thank you for telling us that we are stronger than Russia, and let us have that in our head every day and go home and ask our parliaments to have legislation in order to give a crystal clear sign to Mr. Putin. We're stronger than you, and all the drones should be down the first 5 minutes they reach our airspace. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Does the Vice Chairperson of the committee wish to speak? Elisabetta? You have 3 minutes.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of Political Affairs and Democracy Committee, I want to thank all colleagues for participation in this incredible discussion. But when we demonstrate our commitment to democratic security across Europe, Russia is not sleeping. Russia is using hard power and soft power to undermine our societies. And many of the challenges that were said here, from energy, from sports influence to media, political campaigns, Russia is using all of that. There is no single item and element that Russia is not using. Well, what do? We discuss, that's great, but we lack more power and actions. One military Ukrainian pilot told me recently that during the rescue operation, when his plane was hit, he had only 5 seconds to decide on a safe landing. And if he hesitated 3 seconds more, he would be dead. I'm using this example because we need to make decisions very fast. And yes, we are not prepared. Sometimes we don't have the tools, and this assembly is creating these tools, but we need to act very, very fast. And to be very clear, Russia's goal is clear: to conquer other countries, to destabilize, divide, spread fear, and often to humiliate. Russia is enjoying when other countries are discussing, are gathering meetings, but are actually not hitting that drones down. And that's the problem, and we have to change that, whether we like it or no, because that's the core of Russian mindset, to undermine and destroy our unity of our democracies. And for me, I always say that we also need to think not only about the hard power, but also about soft power, which means that we need to invest much more in education and in growing democratic leaders. We must reinforce our deterrence and our resilience, because not only in military terms, but also in stronger legal frameworks, robust countermeasures against foreign electoral interference, and support for civil society and free media, and having actually a political will that will make that steps, this is something that will matter. We need to invest more and more on our unity and resilience of Europe, and to make us much stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabetta. Dear colleagues, the debate is closed. The Committee on Political Affairs and Democracy has presented the draft resolution document 16272, to which 8 amendments have been tabled. They will be taken in the order in which they appear in the compendium. I remind you that speeches on amendments are limited to 30 seconds. I understand that the Vice Chairperson of the committee wishes to propose to the Assembly that amendments 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 to the draft resolution, which were unanimously approved by the committee, be declared as definitely approved. Is that so, Elisabetta? Yes, thank you. If no objects, I will consider the amendments to be approved. Is there any objection? No objection. The amendments are approved. So, amendment number 3. I will call now. Yes, yes, dear Pablo, the leader of the EPP group.
Thank you. There is a request for an oral amendment.
It comes. Okay. How can I forget you, Pablo? You are the president of my party. So, I call, then I will have a lot of problems. I call Mrs. Olena Komenko to support amendment number 3. Olena, you have 30 seconds. Where is Olena? Somebody else? Maria Mazancheva.
President, thank you so much. In this amendment, it's very simple. We are stating that apart from the European Union, also such important institution as NATO, which countries has been recently attacked by Russian drones, has Ukraine's sovereign right to choose whether we're going to be a member of this organization or not for the security arrangements. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Maria. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? No. What is the opinion of the committee on the amendment?
It was anonymously approved.
Unanimously approved. I shall now put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. Amendment number 3 is agreed. So, as you have just heard, Mr. Pablo Hispan wishes to table an oral amendment which reads as follows. At the end of paragraph 4, add the following sentence. Beyond the electoral context, last week's disinformation campaigns in Latvia around Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence against Women and Domestic Violence, the known as Istanbul Convention, illustrate how Kremlin propaganda narratives are used to polarize societies and undermine democracies. The President, as you know, may accept an oral amendment on the grounds of promoting clarity, accuracy, or conciliation, and if there is not opposition from 10 or more members to it being debated. In my opinion, the oral amendment meets the criteria of Rule 34.7, paragraph A. Is there any opposition to this amendment being debated? No. I therefore call Mr. Pablo Hispan to support the oral amendment. Pablo, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, President. As a result of a massive disinformation campaign fueled by Kremlin narratives, Latvian Parliament has just a few days ago decided to initiate process of withdrawing from the Council of Europe the Convention of Preventing and Combating Violence against Women and Domestic Violence, as we know, the Istanbul Convention. It is a highly dangerous tendency that from this Assembly we must be against and be clear that this is a real commitment of all democracy to be in this convention. So I ask you to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. Does anyone wish to speak against the oral amendment? No. As it is obviously that the committee did not take a position on the oral amendment, I shall now put the oral amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The oral amendment is agreed. Draft resolution. We will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document 16272 as amended. A simple majority is required. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The draft resolution in document 16272 as amended is unanimously adopted. So, we are going now to the first item of business, debate under urgent procedure on urgent call to put an end to the devastating humanitarian catastrophe and the killing of journalists in Gaza, document 16273, presented by Lord Michael German on behalf of the Committee on Migration, Refugees and Displaced Persons. In order to finish by 1 p.m., I will interrupt the list of speakers at about 12:50 to allow time for the reply and the vote. There are a lot who have asked for the floor, so I would like to ask kindly all colleagues to speak within the time limit. I know that it is a small time limit, too short, 2 minutes, but if we try, then we can listen to all voices. So, Lord German, when you are ready, you have the floor for 7 minutes now and 3 minutes at the end to reply to the debate.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's, for me, a particular privilege and a great responsibility to be the rapporteur for this important debate. This motion has been produced at great speed, and on 2 occasions in this last week, we have had to make additions to the motion as a result of actions related to Gaza. It was the decision of the Bureau meeting last Sunday to hold this urgent debate. They decided to refer it to the Migration Committee for the preparation of this urgent draft motion with the title you see. Some people, members and colleagues, have asked why it has been sent to the Migration Committee. And the reason, I believe, is because the Migration Committee is to take this matter forward rather than the Political or Legal Affairs Committees, because the Migration Committee has responsibility for humanitarian issues within this Parliamentary Assembly, and its work also includes displaced persons. And so this motion is firmly based on the humanitarian issues faced by those in Gaza. I have heard arguments from both sides during the committee meetings and outside, and I've tried to address their concerns in this motion. I appreciate that from whatever position you take, there are deeply rooted and personally held views. But I would sincerely like to thank all colleagues for their commitment to the work of this Assembly and the search for a way forward in this field of desperate work. Colleagues, it's not the first time that our Assembly is discussing the terrible consequences of the Israeli military attack on the people of Gaza after the abhorrent terrorist attack and hostage-taking perpetrated by Hamas on the 7th of October 2023. But unfortunately, the situation has only worsened in these 2 years. Thousands of people have been killed, including children and journalists. Paragraph 8 of the draft motion has probably attracted the most attention, but it should be taken as a statement of fact rather than any additional importance given to it. And if anybody wishes to try and work out whether paragraph 8 is actually appropriate, I suggest they turn to the findings of the International Court of Justice, who have guardianship of the Convention on Genocide. And I invite colleagues to take note of their continuing action on this matter and of their interim decisions, which I think would indicate the level of concern that there is by that court. I have tried to identify actions in this report which member states and bodies can actually take to contribute to stopping this devastating humanitarian catastrophe happening in Gaza. Two things have happened since the report was produced, as I said. The US President's plan was issued after the draft resolution, and boats in the humanitarian flotilla crossing the Mediterranean Sea have been seized and the crew arrested in international waters, contrary to the international law of the sea. In respect of the first event, I proposed adding what is now paragraph 3 in the draft resolution, and I can only hope that this US plan will succeed. However, at this time, states and parties involved are still discussing the matter, and there are already many questions being asked. We wish this process every success if it can bring an end to this misery. But I don't believe that this Parliamentary Assembly at this stage should engage in this delicate piece of diplomacy which is engaging all partners on all sides. In respect of the overnight event in the Mediterranean, I will be proposing a handwritten amendment which I'm hoping the Assembly will support. I am aware of the absence of independent sources of information on Gaza, hence the call for accredited journalists to be given access to it. We are told by the Israeli government that it is too dangerous for journalists to go into Gaza. But colleagues, may I remind you that this week we awarded the Václav Havel Prize to a Ukrainian journalist who worked in the war zone in his country. Journalists who undertake this work are an important part of our understanding and knowledge. And as you did this earlier on, Mr. President, yesterday tell us that they are also an important part of maintaining the human rights of people. So figures may be put into question, but the basic facts are these, that there is no one who now contests that the toll of deaths is huge. The figures indicated in the draft resolution are what most sources recognise being the minimum number of deaths. This resolution clearly condemns the devastating man-made humanitarian situation in Gaza. We cannot close our eyes anymore. We must work together so that the basic principles of humanitarian law are respected. I would like you to imagine, in your mind's eye, that you are standing in the rubble of Gaza, facing a young child who has fear in her eyes, who is smaller and thinner than she should be, whose face tells you the misery she faces. Colleagues, would you walk away? I think not. For that child and her future, this misery, death, and destruction must end as swiftly as possible. It must end. It cannot go on. So I ask you to support this motion, take the actions that are within it, and ensure that we take this proposal forward in order to try and assist to making sure this comes to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Chairman. In the debate, I call first, on behalf of the Socialists, Greens and Democrats, Denis Begis.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Lord Chairman, for an excellent report. Let me begin with clarity. I strongly condemn Hamas and its act of the terror. Free all the hostages now. Nothing justifies targeting civilians. But we also have to talk about what is happening now in Gaza. The war has already become the deadliest conflict for journalists in modern history. Nearly 200 media workers have been killed while trying to report the truth. Killing the messenger is not only a human tragedy, it's an attack on press freedom itself. At the same time, children are dying on a scale that should shock all of us. UNICEF and others warn of catastrophic hunger and the collapse of medical care. There are not numbers, there are children with names, faces, and future that are being erased. We have seen international attempts to deliver aid. Right now, a Gaza flotilla is sailing, with people risking their lives simply because we, the international community, and yes, Europe, are failing to do what is necessary. We are failing to ensure that children do not starve, that hospitals can treat the wounded, the basic human dignity is protected. And when we fail, there are still courageous people who step in and try to do something about it. Their courage should not excuse our inaction. It should shame us to do into action. Early this week, we held a minute of silence for the genocide in Srebrenica. Let us hope we will not have to hold another for the thousands who are now dying in Gaza. Justice must be pursued, and I make no distinction here. Whether crimes are committed by Israelis or Palestinians, those responsible must be stand before independent court. But the urgent humanitarian crisis cannot wait for verdicts. What we can do now, we must do now, to stop killing and ease the suffering. So let us be clear. We can debate words like genocide forever, but for me this report is about something more immediate, ending the bloodshed, protecting civilians and giving people the chance to return to something resembling normal life, if this is even possible. We must stand to our accountability, but let us hope the Palestinian people can live normally in Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you, Denis. Dear colleagues, I will be flexible only with the speakers on behalf of political groups. We have 44 which have been listed, and 5 on behalf of the political groups. If we stay within the time limit, then everybody will take the floor. So please don't break the time limit. On behalf of the European People's Party, Dora Bakoyannis. Dora, you have the floor. So it is Pablo? Yes, Pablo. Okay, Pablo Hispan, the leader of the group. Pablo?
Thank you. Thank you, President. There is a problem there are 2 problems with this report. First of all, the historical event that has happened with a new peace initiative that is supported by everybody in the region, all the Arab countries and all the European countries, and this should be the scope and the goal to focus by this organization. And the other thing is that this report has go beyond the mandate. This was a question of the humanitarian crisis, that of course that we must face that. In a moment that there is the second anniversary of the terrorist attack against Israel, so nothing is comment about that, the most horrible attack after the Holocaust, and this report goes in question that belongs to the Legal Affairs Committee. For example, the question of genocide. The question of genocide is a judicial question that belongs to the Legal Affairs Committee and not to the Migration Committee. So I think that this report has go far away from the mandate, and DPP thinks that that it not adjust to the mandate, and that we must think about if it's properly and fair to have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. On behalf of the European Conservatives, Patriots and Affiliates, Marcos Curia. Marco.
Grazie Presidente. Stiamo discutendo oggi di come porre fine alla devastante catastrofe umanitaria a Gaza. Tutto il mondo ne sta parlando, ma non per questa relazione. Per quello che questa relazione non dice, o meglio, dice solo in 2 righe e mezzo su 6 pagine di relazione. Nel mondo si parla della catastrofe umanitaria a Gaza, come porre fine, grazie al piano presentato dagli Stati Uniti d'America e dal Presidente Trump, e non per quello di cui noi stiamo discutendo oggi qui. Piano di pace su cui è d'accordo Israele, l'Autorità Nazionale Palestinese, la Turchia, l'Egitto, il Qatar, gli Emirati Arabi, la Giordania, l'Indonesia, gli Stati europei, l'Unione Europea, le Nazioni Unite, il Vaticano. Manca solo drammaticamente Hamas. Forse siamo vicini a una soluzione. Nel mondo si discute questo, ma non per il Consiglio d'Europa, che invece tutto questo tema non lo vede, non esiste, non lo percepisce. Parliamo di una relazione che di tutto questo non prende nulla in considerazione, come se non fosse accaduto nulla per porre fine alla drammatica emergenza umanitaria a Gaza. E ne parleremo, discuteremo, ci saranno degli emendamenti, parleremo di tutto ciò che in realtà è superato dall'attualità e spero forse anche dalla storia. È un non senso, è surreale. Non ci stupiamo poi se i cittadini, i governi, la società civile non comprendono il ruolo del Consiglio europeo. Questa relazione poteva essere fatta di una riga sola e scrivere, aspettare una settimana per capire se porremo davvero fine alla crisi umanitaria a Gaza. E al bambino di Gaza, di cui parlava Lord German, potremmo dire che c'è davvero una proposta per far finire tutto questo, sperando che per una volta i terroristi di Hamas si dimostrino degli esseri umani.
Thank you, Marco. On behalf of the ALDE Group, Baroness Sal Brinton. Sorry, we cannot hear you.
Mr. President, the attack by Hamas on innocent Israeli citizens on the 7th of October 23 was illegal, appalling and unforgivable. Under the statute of the International Criminal Court, the taking of hostages constitutes a war crime in both international and non-international armed conflict. Hamas should return the remaining hostages as soon as possible and be held accountable to the ICC. The devastating humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza grows in horror and scale. Civilians, including women and children, are killed every day. Their homes are razed to the ground and people are displaced time after time. Nutrition and famine experts have now formally declared famine in Gaza. And the International Federation of Journalists records that at least 246 journalists and media workers have been killed. The IFJ is clear that they are being targeted deliberately by Israel, which is a war crime. Lord German spoke of the ICJ case. Their interim judgment last year told Israel to halt activities that could be genocide. The ICJ has noted that not only has Israel refused to comply, it has escalated its activities, including the recent deliberate demolition of all buildings in Gaza City and the increasing number of health workers, journalists, children and women being targeted. The ICJ is not alone. On the 16th of September, the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory found that Israel has committed genocide. Israel denies this. But what is clear is that President Netanyahu and his senior officials will be held to account, perhaps not this year, but in the future, as will Hamas. And I say to the EPP and ECPA that this is the right route. 80 years ago, the world swore we would never repeat the mistakes of World War II, and the Council of Europe was created in order to protect human rights, the rule of law and democracy. We urge Israel and Hamas to heed the UN, ICJ and ICC calls for a change in their strategy.
Thank you, Baroness Albrinton. And now, on behalf of the United European Left, Alexis Tsipras. Alexis.
Thank you, Mr. President. 8 months ago, from this assembly, we said that on the Palestinian issue, Europe is on the wrong side of history, because it's far from doing all it can for peace. Unfortunately, this is still the case. The issue of the safety of journalists in Gaza, it's a clear example of the unbelievable scale of destruction. According to the UN, since 2023, over 2,040 journalists have been killed by the Israeli armed forces. I wonder, how does a European citizen feel when, on the one hand, there are calls for harsh sanctions, even military interventions, and on the other, Europe turns a blind eye to the mass killing of tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians, in what the UN has called a genocide. Last night, dozens of peace activist ships carrying humanitarian aid were intercepted by Israeli forces. This is an act of international piracy and a severe violation of international law and the law of the sea. The Council of Europe must condemn this act of piracy and demand the immediate and safe return of all activists to their countries. It is the Israeli government that must respect international law instead of the international community tolerating acts of violence, piracy, and genocide. Meanwhile, we have been hearing of the Trump plan, which could be a solution, but it has many gray areas. There is no commitment of the creation of Palestinian state. We cannot ignore the right of Palestinians to self-determination. And it is very important that many countries recognize a Palestinian state. But the plan for the transitional administration in Gaza gives Tony Blair a leading role.
Thank you, Alexis.
But who is Tony Blair? He's not an advocate of peace, but a hawk of war, who lied and misled public opinion about invading Iraq. So it is tragic irony that this politician wants to bring peace to Gaza. Peace for Israelis and Palestinians can only be achieved through a two-state solution on the basis of the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as a capital of Palestine, after a ceasefire and the return of all hostages and with the active involvement of the UN Security Council without self-ordained saviors. So I call on European leaders to stop being passive and to take initiatives to end the war.
Dear colleagues,
and guarantee
I have just said that I will be a bit flexible with the political groups, the representatives of the political groups. Mr. Tsipras, thank you so much. Bernard Sabella is next. We will have Bernard online.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, together with the devastation of the Gaza Strip and its population, the latest figures released by the Committee to Protect Journalists in New York say 195 journalists were killed. Now, the outcry and condemnation that rightly followed the dreadful attack of October 7, 2023 by Hamas should not prevent moral outcry against what has been happening in Gaza since. The Palestinian National Authority welcomed the latest peace initiative by President Trump. Palestinians must be partners and not spectators. Allow me to suggest that your assembly must be clear in its appeal for an immediate cessation of hostilities and for the release of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners, for the protection of journalists, humanitarian workers, and civilians, for humanitarian corridors, and for the UN agencies to carry on humanitarian aid, and for a genuine political process in which Palestinians and Israelis are engaged in shaping a common future. Colleagues, Gaza is calling you not only as representatives of your electorates, but as human beings concerned with dignity, justice, and peace, whether it is in Palestine, Israel, Ukraine. history will judge all of us, not by the words we speak today, but by the courage we show in answering that call. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernard. I call next Michael Farrugia. Michael.
Thank you very much, Chair. The targeted killing of journalists by the Israeli army is intended to keep the outside world in the dark about all that's happening in the state of Palestine. The few brave journalists, while knowing that their life is at stake, are still reporting on the ongoing atrocities in Gaza, defied by the UN, multiple international fora, and academics as genocide. Starvation, blocking the entry of food, water, energy, medical supplies, the near total destruction of hospitals, schools, houses. The killing of 66,000 Palestinians, mainly women, children, medics, aid workers, and many much more wounded and others taken hostage, the robbing of today's children's future. No wonder foreign journalists are blocked from entering the enclave to witness what's ongoing. The past guilt of some countries, the sympathy for the suffering from atrocities committed in the past, should not distract us on what's ongoing in the state of Palestine, mainly Gaza. Discussions for peace should include the West Bank. Permanent, everlasting peace can ultimately be achieved after the two-state solution, according to years-old UN resolution, is implemented, and the state of Palestine run by a democratically elected government by Palestinians. No room for apartheid. Rightly so. In this assembly, Hamas was condemned, not Palestinians. Repeatedly, this assembly condemned the Israeli army and government, not the Israeli population or Jews. All those involved should remain accountable for their doing. Europe is slowly becoming irrelevant, sidelined by others. It's time to stand up. No more two weights, two measures. We see and experience this in the plenary when talking about journalists. We experience this depending on which war we are talking about. EBU, UEFA, FIFA should set an example, one weight, one measure to counteract atrocities. Sanctions on those behind the atrocities should be considered. Anyone staying silent on the sideline or defending what's ongoing is condoning. Wake up and let's put pressure and be on the right side of history. Let's be frank. Tomorrow history will judge us very much. How much today we judge those who stayed silent and condoned atrocities throughout history. Thank you.
Okay, it's 22 seconds. I know that some of the speakers on behalf of the political groups spoke more than 2 minutes. I will kindly ask you, if we all want all colleagues to be here today to this important issue, to be in the time limit of 2 minutes and even less. Thank you so much. Next is Robert Jonathan Sigyartau.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, this war did not begin with Israel. It began with Hamas' barbaric massacre on 7th October, the worst atrocity committed against Jews since the Holocaust. The instability we see today in the Middle East is not the result of Israel's defense, but of Iran's ring of fire. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and Iran itself launching missiles and drones. Yes, tragically, there are images of dead civilians, but let us remember, in World War II, more German civilians were killed than British civilians. Yet no one doubted who started the war, nor who bore responsibility. Right and wrong cannot be measured only by casualty figures, but by who deliberately attacks civilians, who hides behind them, and what their ultimate purpose is: terrorism. This is not a war of aggression, it is a war of survival. The true obstacle to peace is not Israel's right to defend itself, but Hamas and Iran's campaign of annihilation. For these reasons, I will vote against this politicized resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Aurora Floridia is next.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. I will speak in Italian. Oggi a Gaza siamo di fronte a una tragedia umanitaria che scuote le coscienze di tutto il mondo che chiede con forza e disperazione un'azione immediata da parte dei vari governi. Di fronte all'inazione politica, la società civile si è mobilitata, dimostrando con la flottiglia coraggio e grandezza morale attraverso la non violenza. un potente strumento che spaventa chi è armato fino ai denti. E oggi qui ricordiamo il 2 di ottobre la giornata della non violenza, la giornata internazionale della violenza è proprio oggi, il 2 di ottobre. Non violenza che i giornalisti esercitano ogni giorno nel loro lavoro, veri difensori dei diritti umani, soprattutto nelle aree di conflitto. Eppure nel 2025 siamo ancora costretti a ricordare che uccidere giornalisti è inaccettabile, è assurdo, è barbaro, è vergognoso. E allora voglio ricordare qui Mariam Abu Daqqa, giornalista palestinese, uccisa a Gaza alla fine di agosto di quest'anno, mi trema anche la voce. Nella sua lettera d'addio al figlio ha scritto: «Se non posso proteggerti con il mio corpo, spero che le mie parole proteggeranno il tuo futuro». Se vogliamo che le sue parole abbiano un senso, dobbiamo far sentire la nostra voce a difesa dell'umanità, della libertà di espressione e del diritto alla vita, anche qui oggi al Consiglio d'Europa. Grazie.
Thank you, Aurora. Dimitris Markopoulos is next.
Dear colleagues, the war in Gaza is first and foremost a human tragedy. At its center lies Hamas, whose acts of terror, including the abduction and continued detention of hostages, constitute grave violations of international law and human dignity. We must speak with one voice. These hostages must be released immediately and unconditionally. Hamas must clarify its position about USA's peace plan. Israel, like every state, has the right to defend its citizens. Yet this right must always be exercised with proportionality and with full respect for civilian life. The scale of destruction in Gaza and the heavy civilian cost risk undermining humanitarian principles and fueling further radicalization. We cannot overlook the hidden drivers of this conflict: foreign powers that provide Hamas with funding, powers that provide weapons, and media platforms bear a direct responsibility for prolonging violence. Their rule must be exposed and condemned without ambiguity. Hamas is not alone. This is the secret war of Gaza. As the Council of Europe, our duty is clear: to defend human rights, to demand accountability, to protect civilians, and to work tirelessly for peace. Only by isolating extremism and upholding the principles of international law can we hope to see a future where dignity and security are shared by all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitris. Edith Estrella, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear President, dear colleagues. For decades, the international community has defended the existence of two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security. The United Nations have affirmed this repeatedly, and this year, more and more countries have recognized Palestine as a state. But what has been Israel's response? Prime Minister Netanyahu has declared that Palestinian state will never happen. This is not a negotiation position. Peace will not be built on never. Peace will only come when both peoples, Israeli and Palestinian, are recognized, respected, and free. The so-called Trump plan reduced the Palestinian Authority to a spectator and spoke of Gaza's administration in terms reminiscent of Iraq. Occupation dressed up as a transition without responsibility, without legitimacy, and without hope. And where was Europe in all of this? Marginalized. If Europe's voice is silenced, the voice of balance and of international law is silenced with it. Meanwhile, even the truth is under attack. Over 200 journalists have been killed in Gaza since October 2023. They were not terrorists, they were witnesses. Without their work, accountability dies. Without their courage, victims are arrested twice, once by violence and again by silence. Colleagues, this is a moment of truth. Gaza cannot wait. The journalists who risk their lives cannot wait. We must not be silent, not now, not ever. This is not just about Gaza.
Thank you, Edith.
This is about we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Inget Skau. Inget, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. Yet again, we have an urgent debate on the devastating humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. In June, I was rapporteur on our urgent report on Gaza, and sadly, since June, the catastrophe is even worse. Our Assembly has clearly condemned Hamas' attack on the 7th of October, almost 2 years ago, and we have done so repeatedly. Again, I repeat, there is no doubt that Israel has a right to self-defense. But what is happening in Gaza is not self-defense. The attacks on the civilian population in Gaza on journalists are completely out of proportion, simply unacceptable. But, President, this week we have seen a proposal for a ceasefire. As many experts have pointed out, this is not a perfect plan, but it is a welcome development. Hamas uses civilians as human shields, and we must call on them to respect the proposal so that a ceasefire and ultimately peace can be reached. The hostages must be released. The proposal is an important first step. It must be followed up by both sides. Thank you, Lord German, for addressing also journalists in your report. The fact that 200 Palestinian journalists have been killed and many detained, and that international journalists are not granted access to report from Gaza is a human rights violation. They are civilians. They must be protected so that they can do their job. We need the eyes and ears for independent journalists on the ground. They report, they question, they rely, imagine for the world to see. Whether or not the atrocities in Gaza amount to genocide is widely debated. This is not for us as a political assembly to decide. It is for the courts. I therefore encourage you to support Amendment 1.
Thank you, Ingrid. Francesco Verducci. We cannot hear you, Francesco. Press the button. Insert your badge if you haven't done so.
Presidente, questa notte la Sumud flottiglia diretta verso Gaza per portare cibo e per porre l'attenzione del mondo sulla catastrofe umanitaria in atto nell'inerzia dei governi è stata attaccata dall'esercito israeliano, un'aggressione in acque internazionali contro la legge. Le attiviste, gli attivisti, tra cui anche giovani ebrei e alcuni nostri colleghi parlamentari, non hanno posto resistenza e sono stati arrestati. Presidente, la nostra Assemblea deve condannare quanto sta avvenendo. La flottiglia è una missione umanitaria, non violenta, nel pieno rispetto della legalità internazionale. Sta dando voce a milioni di persone che non vogliono rimanere indifferenti. Lo sterminio di Gaza è un crimine contro l'umanità. L'intera striscia di Gaza è ridotta in macerie, fame, carestia, migliaia di bambini morti, ospedali bombardati, giornalisti uccisi per impedire che tutto venisse documentato. Il presidente Netanyahu dovrà risponderne. All'infamia del terrorismo criminale di Hamas, le democrazie hanno il dovere di reagire con una fermezza che non violi i propri principi fondanti. Ne va della loro credibilità, della loro forza morale e politica. Invece si è usata una forza brutale che colpisce senza distinzioni, che colpisce gli innocenti e distrugge il diritto internazionale. Si fermi l'occupazione. Vengano liberati tutti gli ostaggi, si aprano corridoi umanitari, venga riconosciuto subito lo Stato di Palestina. Presidente, deve continuare a vivere l'idea della pace, due popoli per due Stati, È il modo più forte anche per contrastare ogni forma di antisemitismo e per non arrenderci a un mondo di odio che divora se stesso. Grazie Presidente.
Thank you, Francesco. Luz Martínez Seijo is next. Luz.
Gracias, presidente. La situación que atraviesa la Franja de Gaza es simplemente dramática. Me voy a centrar en las condiciones extremas de los periodistas que intentan documentar la tragedia humanitaria que allí se vive. Desde octubre de 2023, Gaza ha sido escenario de una ofensiva militar que ha causado más de 65.000 muertes y más de 18.000 niños han sido asesinados. Alrededor de 796.000 personas han sido desplazadas, de un total que supera el 86% de la población gazatí, bajo órdenes de evacuación o en zonas militarizadas, según organismos internacionales. Y todo ello ha conducido a que la Asociación Internacional de Académicos del Genocidio concluya que estamos ante un genocidio, un auténtico genocidio. Porque Israel ha limitado la distribución de ayuda humanitaria, restringiendo los puntos de distribución a cifras vergonzosas. Se han documentado ataques deliberados a hospitales, escuelas, universidades, instalaciones de la ONU y centros de culto, afectando directamente a civiles y contrarios al derecho internacional y derecho internacional humanitario. Más de 238 periodistas y 531 trabajadores humanitarios han sido asesinados desde el 7 de octubre de 2023, lo que convierte a Gaza en uno de los conflictos más letales para el personal humanitario y medios de comunicación. En este contexto, los periodistas se han convertido en testigos incómodos, han sido bombardeados, perseguidos y asesinados para ocultar la verdad y desinformar a la comunidad internacional. La Convención Europea de Derechos Humanos garantiza la libertad de expresión, incluyendo el derecho a recibir y difundir información sin injerencias. Por ello, esta Asamblea debe condenar enérgicamente los ataques contra periodistas en Gaza, como violaciones del derecho internacional humanitario y activar mecanismos para la protección de los periodistas. La defensa de la libertad de prensa no es solo una cuestión técnica, es una cuestión de principios. Sin periodistas no hay testigos, sin testigos no hay verdad y sin verdad no hay paz. Y para un futuro de paz hay que reconocer una vez el Estado de Palestina. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you, Luz. Dina Desits is next. Thank you, Luz.
Thank you, Chair. Dear colleagues, when I talk about Gaza as a parliamentarian of peace, I must say that all the values that we stand for, such as human rights, democracy and rule of law, are unfortunately unfamiliar for Palestinian people. In the last 2 years, tens of thousands of civilian lives are lost, and around 70% of them were children and women. Millions are displaced from their homes. Shelters are also being bombed together with the hospitals, schools, and sacred places. In August this year, famine is formally recognized in Gaza. Moreover, delivering the aid is very limited, and when civilians, including children, are trying to reach the food, water, and other essentials, they have been murdered on the way. Those who are trying to record all of this and inform the world as journalists and hundreds of humanitarian workers are also being murdered. I have to emphasize that deliberate targeting of civilians and the widespread destruction of civilian infrastructure is not called self-defense, but represents grave violation of international humanitarian law. Hunger and thirst is not and cannot become a weapon. There is a need for immediate and permanent ceasefire and an urgent end of this humanitarian catastrophe, because victims cannot be segregated by nation, origin, faith, color of the skin, or anything else. It's equally painful for me to see the deaths of innocent children in Gaza as it is to see the suffering of children from Ukraine or in conflict-affected areas across the world. My country, Montenegro, stands for achieving a just and sustainable, long-lasting peace for two states based on a two-state solution in accordance with international law and relevant UN resolutions. With the UN meeting from last week and afterwards in activities and negotiations, there is a hope that this conflict will come to an end. But without delay, immediate entry and distribution of humanitarian aid must reach those in need. The key question for all of us is this: is there anyone to say stop killing innocent children, women and elderly in Gaza, not just by bullet, but with starvation? Who has the courage and power not just to speak, but to act? Thank you.
Thank you, Dina.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, chers collègues. Le 8 septembre, j'ai participé avec une délégation de parlementaires turcs à une visite au poste frontière de Rafah. Des centaines de camions d'aide humanitaire restaient bloqués à la frontière alors que des milliers de personnes avaient déjà perdu la vie de femmes à Gaza. Je ne vous raconte pas un conte, je vous décris une scène dont j'ai été le témoin direct. Cette menace de femmes commise par Israël est une punition collective infligée à des civils sans défense. La nuit dernière, la flottille Sumut, dont son seul but est de briser le blocus, a été attaquée et interceptée en haute mer par les forces israéliennes. Les participants, les activistes, les journalistes, les médecins, les acteurs ont été arrêtés arbitrairement, victimes d'un acte de prêterie d'État et d'un mépris absolu du droit international. Israël commet un crime contre l'humanité en s'en prenant à celles et à ceux qui n'apportent que de la nourriture et des soins à un peuple assiégé. Ce n'est pas seulement une violation de droit maritime, c'est une attaque frontale contre la conscience universelle. Je m'adresse aux héros et aux héroïnes de Sumut. Nous, les personnes de conscience de ce monde, nous sommes à vos côtés, vous n'êtes pas seuls, et je m'adresse à mes collègues, nous devons tous agir pour leur libération immédiatement. Quoi que fasse Israël, il ne doit jamais oublier ceci. Aujourd'hui, le blocus qu'il impose depuis des années a été brisé. Et à partir de maintenant, il continuera à être brisé par la mer, par la terre et par l'air, avec des centaines de navires et des milliers de personnes. Chers collègues, nous ne pouvons plus tolérer l'impunité. Il est temps que l'État d'Israël soit retiré de son statut d'observateur au sein de notre Assemblée. Le maintien d'un tel privilège face à des crimes humanitaires répétés est incompatible avec les valeurs fondamentales de notre Conseil. Ce double standard est profondément honteux. Je lance un appel solennel à tous les États membres de notre Conseil qui n'ont pas encore reconnu la Palestine. Reconnaissez sans délai l'État de Palestine. Il est temps que chacun assume sa responsabilité historique. Merci.
Sabina Kudic is next.
Dear colleagues, on June 25th, in this very chamber, we were addressed by President Zelensky at the occasion of the signing Treaty for Special Tribunal for the Crimes of Aggression in Ukraine. On that day, I did something that the security protocol of this building forbids, which is I managed to sneak in my then 9-year-old son into this room and hide him in the last row so he could see and witness that what we do here, what I do here, what we do here jointly matters. And that there are consequences to horrible actions done by Russia in Ukraine, and that there are lessons to be learned. But not all lessons do we learn the same. And Gaza apparently is a lesson that we failed to learn. At the beginning of this session, we marked 30 years of genocide in Srebrenica with a moment of silence. In some years, we will be marking genocide in Gaza with a moment of silence in this very same chamber. However, there will be records, there will be reports, there will be footage from these kinds of debates where we use the term, and we use it today again, two sides. We say two sides. There are no two sides. There are no two sides to indiscriminate killings of civilians, children, women, journalists, medical workers. I refuse to believe that there is a second side to that in this chamber. Because I invite you, dear colleagues, find me an article of the European Convention of Human Rights. Find me a verse from the Bible, from Quran, from Torah, from any religious text that allows what is going on in Gaza in front of our eyes today.
Thank you,
we need
Sabina.
to say no to genocide, and we need to say no today.
Thank you. Namik Tan is next.
President, distinguished colleagues, today, Gaza faces one of the most devastating humanitarian catastrophes of our time. Thousands of civilians killed, families displaced, schools and hospitals destroyed. Last night, flagrantly violating international law, Israeli forces intercepted global smooth flotilla, a peaceful civilian mission in international waters delivering life-saving aid. This is another example of the brutal silencing of all resist Israeli atrocities, including the blockade on Gaza. I strongly condemn this act of piracy. The scale of human suffering in Gaza is beyond words, yet it must be spoken and recorded. Tragically, those who risk their lives to bear witness are being killed in unprecedented numbers. More journalists have died in Gaza over the past year than in any other conflict in recent memory. These are not statistics, but human beings, professionals who carried cameras, not weapons. Their killing is a violation of international law and strikes at the heart of press freedom. When someone clearly marked press is struck, it is not an accident. It is an attempt to silence truth. When truth is silenced, accountability dies with it. As parliamentarians, defenders of human rights and European values, we cannot look away. We must first call for an immediate independent investigation into killings of journalists in Gaza. Second, support the safety of those still reporting. Third, reject impunity everywhere, whether in Gaza, Ukraine, or any other conflict.
Thank you.
Colleagues, journalists are society's conscience, memory, bridge to the
Namik,
truth.
thank you.
If we fail to defend them,
I don't
we
want to
fail
cut
not only
the microphone.
profession,
Namik,
but
thank you.
civilians whose stories
Okay, we go on.
will ever told. Let's
Namik.
honor their sacrifice, not with silence, but with urgent and united action. Thank you.
Christophe Lacroix.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ce matin, je ne peux vraiment pas cacher ma colère, car cette nuit encore, Israël a délibérément violé le droit international en capturant l'équipage de la flottille pour Gaza. Violation de la Convention des Nations Unies sur le droit de la mer, violation de la Charte des Nations Unies, violation de la Convention de Genève, en criminalisant les humanitaires, les journalistes et tous ces jeunes qui nous donnent une fameuse leçon à toutes et tous ici. Ces jeunes présents à bord. Netanyahou s'enfonce toujours davantage dans l'irréparable, dans ce qu'il y a de plus noir dans l'humanité. Je veux donc apporter à tous ces jeunes, à tous ces résistants pacifistes, mon plein soutien, car la vérité guide leurs pas. Par idéal, ils agissent là où nos gouvernements ont failli. Leur courage nous honore et nous oblige. Leur arrestation vient ainsi s'ajouter à la longue liste des violations flagrantes par Israël du droit. Et nous devons donc demander leur libération tout de suite, tout de suite. Et j'ai aussi honte, une honte viscérale. Comment des collègues, ici même, dans ce temple des droits de l'homme, peuvent détourner le regard? Comment pouvez-vous, par frilosité ou lâcheté, vous rendre complice du silence? Comment est-il possible qu'un collègue du Parti populaire européen tienne ici des propos négationnistes et révisionnistes? C'est une honte que je n'aurais jamais cru connaître il y a quelques mois encore. Et quelle dérive de ce grand mouvement politique qu'est le Parti populaire européen. Car il faut dire la vérité. Aujourd'hui, c'est un génocide qui se passe. C'est un génocide. Le courage, c'est de chercher la vérité et de la dire. La vérité, c'est un génocide. Et nous devons donc réclamer la libération immédiate et être enfin à hauteur de l'histoire et de défendre une certaine idée de qui nous sommes réellement. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Christophe. We are famous here for having different opinions. Belén Hoyer is next.
Gracias, señor presidente. Señorías, el brutal atentado del 7 de octubre de 2023 perpetrado por la organización terrorista Hamás nunca debió haber ocurrido. Fue un ataque que arrasó un festival de música, dejando a cientos de jóvenes inocentes asesinados o secuestrados. Tampoco debió producirse nunca la respuesta absolutamente desproporcionada que ha llevado a cabo el gobierno de Netanyahu en Gaza. Una ofensiva militar junto a un bloqueo inaceptable de la ayuda humanitaria, cuyas consecuencias están pagando con un sufrimiento atroz miles de civiles, muchos de ellos niños y bebés. Como señaló Su Majestad el Rey Felipe VI, el jefe de Estado en España, lo que estamos viendo es una masacre. Las imágenes que nos llegan desde Oriente Próximo parecen una pesadilla, pero no lo son. Son una trágica realidad, una realidad que quedará como una de las manchas más oscuras de este siglo. No nos corresponde a nosotros juzgar los crímenes que puedan haberse cometido. Para eso están los tribunales internacionales que deben actuar con independencia y rigor. Pero sí nos corresponde alzar la voz por la paz. Esta semana, por fin, se ha abierto una puerta a la esperanza, una oportunidad real para detener la violencia. Esperemos que jamás acepte las condiciones que se le plantean para lograr un alto al fuego duradero, la entrega de todas las armas y la liberación inmediata de todos los rehenes. Solo así podrá iniciarse el camino hacia una solución que garantice la seguridad en Israel y la dignidad del pueblo palestino. Señorías, para nosotros la paz no debe ser una utopía, debe ser una exigencia moral y una responsabilidad política. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Belen. Iona Arendt. Is Iona here? We go on. Boriana Berg. Boriana.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. Hamas is responsible for the suffering of people of Gaza. Do not forget how the war began, with 1,200 civilians brutally murdered at a music festival and in their homes. Infants were burnt alive before their parents' eyes. Women were raped and mutilated. 250 civilians were taken hostage. 48 of them is still in Hamas tunnels. Hamas doesn't want peace. Hamas and the mullahs in Iran share one goal: to annihilate the Jews and the state of Israel. That goal supersedes everything else, from the river to the sea. The final solution, whatever it takes. Hamas fanatics willing to sacrifice the entire population of Gaza. They use women and children as human shields. Hamas hides behind and among its own people. Israel's goal is not to kill Palestinian civilians. Israel's goal is to neutralize the deadly threat that Hamas possesses. Hamas is a terrorist cult, Islamists who oppressed women and killed homosexuals. If we want to stop the suffering in Gaza, we must put pressure on Hamas. Thank you.
Thank you, Boriana. Anne Graves.
Okay, thank you. President and colleagues, Ireland is committed to the promotion and protection of the rights of freedom of expression. Journalists and media workers perform a vital, essential public service. They hold power to account. We are witnessing a direct attack on free speech in Gaza, where journalists in their hundreds have been killed since October 2023. Israel is not only committing genocide in Gaza, but also silencing journalists reporting their crimes against humanity that are being perpetrated by the Israeli army with impunity. Ireland signed a joint statement in August of this year of the Media Freedom Coalition on foreign media access to Gaza, calling on Israel to allow immediate independent foreign media access and to afford protection for journalists operating in Gaza. Journalists and media staff must be allowed to carry out their reporting without threat to life or safety. I stand in solidarity with the global Sumud Flotilla, a fleet of over 500 civilian activists committed to bringing humanitarian aid to the starving people of Gaza, including Senator Chris Andrew, an Irish parliamentarian and comrade who has supported the people of Palestine. This was a peaceful humanitarian, non-violent mission to open a corridor to bring food and aid to the people of Gaza that are faced with enforced starvation. Chris and others have been illegally detained by armed Israeli forces in international waters. The violent interception is a blatant violation of international law. Irish people stand shoulder to shoulder with our Palestinian brothers and sisters. We know only too well about colonisation and occupation. Next Tuesday marks 2 years since October the 7th, 2023, and still the genocide in Gaza continues. 28 children killed every single day. We need to do better. We need to stand up, and we need to stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine.
Thank you, Anne. Marianne Binder-Keller.
Herr Präsident, Kolleginnen und Kollegen! Ich wage zu behaupten, dass es niemanden gibt in diesem Rat, der nicht hochbesorgt und mitgenommen ist über die humanitäre Situation in Gaza. Wir sind hier nicht in keinster Weise die Anwälte der Regierung Netanyahu und dessen Kriegsführung. Aber, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, wir sind auch kein Gerichtshof, der Urteile fällt. Wir sind diejenigen, welche das humanitäre Völkerrecht einfordern, die Menschenrechte anmahnen und das Elend benennen. Wenn wir es nun aber auf diese Weise mit einem solchen Rapport tun, dann erfüllen wir unsere Aufgabe nicht. Warum? Erstens, dieser Bericht ist hastig erstellt. Fundierte Diskussionen in der Kommission konnten aufgrund der knappen Zeit gar nicht stattfinden. Zweitens, der Bericht ist einseitig. Wo ist die Verantwortung der Hamas für den andauernden Krieg? Drittens, diese einseitigen Schuldzuweisungen kommen zum komplett falschen Zeitpunkt. Das hat uns auch die israelische Opposition in der Kommission eindringlich erklärt. Weshalb? Wir blicken heute mit großer Hoffnung auf das mögliche Ende dieses Krieges in diesen Tagen. Die Bedingungen hat Netanyahu akzeptiert, die Autonomiebehörde auf. Worauf warten wir? Voilà, auf Hamas. Steht nicht im Bericht, außer Sie würden natürlich den Antrag 3 unterstützen. Dann wäre es 2 unterstützen, dann wäre es wenigstens etwas ausgeglichener. Und zweitens, und dies ist wirklich das Kernstück in diesem Bericht, 4 Tage vor dem 7. Oktober, an welchem wir dann alle wieder Sonntagsreden halten in der Verurteilung des größten Pogroms seit dem Zweiten Weltkrieg an jüdischen Menschen, verabschieden wir hier einen Bericht, in welchem wir Israel des Völkermords bezichtigen. Nicht ganz 80 Jahre nach dem Holocaust. Außer natürlich, Sie unterstützen Antrag 3 und streiche das. Ich sage es Ihnen gerne nochmals, wir sind kein Gerichtshof. So verstehe ich meine Verpflichtung in diesem Rat nicht. Wir müssen gerecht sein.
Thank you, Mariam. Piero Fassino. Piero, you have the floor. Piero.
Grazie Presidente. I going to speak Italian. Siamo tutti ovviamente colpiti dalle sofferenze, dai lutti, dalle devastazioni che da 2 anni tormentano la popolazione di Gaza e siamo del tutto consapevoli anche delle tante violazioni dei diritti che in questi 2 anni si sono consumate e come il diritto all'autodifesa di Israele, che tutti abbiamo riconosciuto, sia stato in realtà spesso trasformato in una punizione collettiva del popolo palestinese. Per questo io penso che in questo momento noi dobbiamo concentrare tutte le nostre energie per fermare la guerra, perché fermare la guerra significa intanto fermare ogni forma di ulteriore sofferenza. Il piano Trump non è indenne da ambiguità che sono già state richiamate, però offre una opportunità e dopo 2 anni è la prima volta che c'è la possibilità concreta di interrompere questo conflitto e di avviare la ricerca di una soluzione politica. Per questo io credo che dobbiamo insistere anche da questa sede perché tutte le parti in conflitto accettino il piano e ci rivolgiamo compresi ad Hamas. E dobbiamo chiedere che vengano compiuti subito i primi passi di quel piano: liberazione degli ostaggi, cessazione del fuoco, inoltre senza ostacoli di tutti gli aiuti umanitari alla popolazione. E tutto questo per aprire la strada all'unica soluzione possibile: due popoli, due stati. Spesso si pensa che in conflitto lì siano un diritto e un torto e una ragione. Non è così. Lì in conflitto sono due ragioni, perché una ragione l'aspirazione del popolo palestinese di avere una patria, ed è una ragione l'aspirazione di Israele a vivere riconosciuto e sicuro senza più nessuno metta in discussione la sua esistenza. E mettere insieme due ragioni è spesso più complicato che non trovare la soluzione tra un torto e una ragione. Ed è questo l'impegno su cui noi dobbiamo concentrare il nostro impegno. L'unica soluzione possibile: due popoli, due stati.
Thank you. Mariam Geka, you have the floor. I can't hear you, Mariam. Okay, no, you can go on.
The people of Gaza have faced bombardment, siege, starvation, and mass killing, a genocide unfolding before our eyes. Israel's far-right fundamentalist government has unleashed hell and destruction with total impunity, collectively punishing an entire people. The IPC has confirmed the highest alarm by confirming famine conditions, phase 5 inside Gaza. That is truly unbearable. A recent UN Commission of Inquiry went further, concluding that Israel has committed genocide. Never again, nie wieder, was the word's promise, yet today we witness scenes echoing history's darkest chapter. Over 18,000 children killed, at least 248 journalists deliberately targeted, silenced, and buried with the truth. Instead of learning from the lessons of the Holocaust, anti-Semitism is being weaponized to shield Israel, dehumanizing Palestinians and eroding global values. Israel's crimes and expansionism now threaten the international system itself, destabilizing the region and even attacking the peaceful global Sumut flotilla. Unfortunately, for nearly 2 years, European institutions rejected urgent calls to hold Israel accountable, closing their eyes to the lowest point of humanity, a brutality unseen in the last century, until it could no longer be ignored. I thank the countries that recognized Palestine for their principled stance. And as President Erdogan reminded the world at the United Nations, if this impunity continues, it will not stop at Gaza or the West Bank. It will corrode the very foundations of the global order and destroy the values we claim to stand for. Turkey will continue to stand firmly for the rights of the Palestinian people and for a two-state solution based on international law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. Saskia Kluit.
Thank you, President. Palestinian journalists are eyes on the truth in this war. 40 have already died this year, 200 more in total. These are grave violations by Israel of international law. Article 79 of the Geneva Conventions is explicitly there to find out about war crimes and acts of genocide. So what have Palestinian journalists found so far? They have found ambulance workers who've been shot to death while they tried to rescue their countrymen. They have found out that 80% of Gaza has been bombed to pieces. They have found out that every education building has been demolished. Most hospitals are daily under attack. This week, a nurse was shot when he looked out of the door in a Palestinian hospital. Hundreds of children are being shot in their head, they're being shot in their chest, and hundreds of thousands of people are being famined. All these are acts, clear attacks on the existence and the future of the Palestinian people. And this is why the UN Commission on the Palestinian Territories argued that risks of genocides are there, as did the ICG, as did the ICC, as did the Association of Genocide Scholars. But yet the fact is that this report doesn't recognize the fact of genocide. We don't, as a parliament, say this will be a genocide. What we do by accepting Amendment 1 is that we literally will erase the only mention of accountability and of responsibility of Israel of genocide. And why we do that is because we don't want to upset Israel, the perpetrator. We don't want to upset Jewish people. But we have to know, we all know, it's not only 66,000 dead Palestinians. Almost 400,000 are already dead. Almost 20% of the Palestinian population has died due to lack of health care. So it's high time we don't listen to all the rubble, we listen to the Palestinian people and take into account their feelings.
Thank you, Saskia. Emanuele Zingeris.
One drop of Palestinian blood has no lesser weight than one drop of Jewish blood. My mother spent 4 years in Nazi camps. During those 4 years, she watched Allies aircraft flying overhead on their way to bomb Nazi fortresses, but they never targeted the fence of those camps. She felt that if there had been a Jewish state at the time, it might have come to attack those fences and liberate hundreds of thousands who later become millions of Holocaust victims. So I welcome the speech of my brother, Mr. Bernard Sabella, earlier in this debate. Many times I visited him in Ramallah, but the state of Israel is twice smaller, like Estonia. The massacre of 7th of October, just we are in 3 days, of 23 was not an attack on occupied territories, but on very Israeli state itself. Many of mayors and citizens massacred on 7th of October were from communities most friendly for Palestinian Gazans. The young people attending the music festival that they represented the peace movement. They were against Netanyahu, and large percentage were opposing government in his right-wing tendencies. The latest poll showed that 80% of Israelis want peace. All Palestinian representatives, including the Palestinian Authority, have called upon Hamas to sign a peace agreement, and all world united behind that. But terror continues, and the hostages are still in their hands. Summarizing the actions of the Israeli Defense Forces as intentional genocide and citing it as a source of Human Rights Commission, which includes members like Cuba, Sudan, is a provocation against the peace process and against finding of two-state solutions for Israelis and Palestinians, who I am in favor. I urge the Assembly to remove the word genocide as our Assembly contribution to advancing the peace process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manuelis. Nerea Hedo.
Sí, voy a empezar agradeciendo al ponente por este informe y no voy a repetir el repudio al terrible ataque de Hamás y la necesidad de devolución de los rehenes, ni la desproporcionada respuesta de Israel, que no para. Escuelas y hospitales destruidos, hambre como arma de guerra, personal humanitario y sanitario asesinado, lo vemos todos los días, a pesar del empeño de Israel para que no sea posible, no permitiendo la entrada a periodistas extranjeros o asesinando a más de 200 periodistas palestinos, muchos de ellos acusados de terroristas. A ellos les niegan hacer su trabajo con independencia y les niegan la vida, lo que hay que investigar y pedir responsabilidades. Y al mundo nos quieren negar la información y la verdad, y sin verdad no hay democracia. Ahora hay encima de la mesa un plan de paz. Cualquier iniciativa que lleve al fin de la guerra es una oportunidad y un motivo de esperanza, aunque tenemos que saber que el fin de la guerra no automáticamente significa la paz, pero por lo menos ayuda. Pero este plan a mí me genera dudas. No tengo claro si es una oportunidad real, porque no sé si es un plan o un ultimátum. Acéptalo en 3 días o el infierno. Y tras el aval a la propuesta, Netanyahu no va a reconocer el Estado palestino, amenaza, intercepta y detiene a los activistas de la flotilla, sigue bombardeando Gaza. Si se logra el acuerdo, que no estaría mal, tenemos que ser conscientes que será entre un genocida, un vendedor de armas y un grupo terrorista, es decir, sin los palestinos. Un plan sin metodología, sin plazos y sin garantías. ¿Y cómo queda Cisjordania? Ocupada y olvidada. Además, un plan de paz no borra las atrocidades que vemos todos los días en directo. Aunque dicho todo esto, también quiero resaltar que ojalá sea el principio de la solución. Una solución que pasa por el respeto al derecho internacional, al derecho humanitario, a los derechos humanos y al mutuo respeto y reconocimiento de ambos pueblos.
Thank you, Nerea. Jürgen Hart.
Herr Präsident, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, ich möchte gerne auf Deutsch sprechen. Natürlich ist es richtig, dass diese Versammlung sich mit dieser großen Katastrophe im Nahen Osten zwischen Israel, den Terroristen im Gaza und den Palästinensern beschäftigt. Und deswegen gibt es auch nichts dagegen einzuwenden, dass wir das hier intensiv diskutieren. Aber ich bin schon in Sorge angesichts des vorliegenden Textes. Die Ereignisse vom vergangenen Montag in Washington, die ja erstmals eine echte Perspektive zu einem Frieden eröffnen, weil eben nicht nur die westliche Welt, praktisch alle Regierungen und Parlamente der Staaten, deren Bürger wir hier vertreten, und auch die arabische Welt diesem Plan zugestimmt hat, das kommt in diesem Papier kaum vor. Diese Initiative hätte natürlich meines Erachtens als Europarat auf diesen Punkt eingehen müssen und wir hätten eine Position zu diesem Friedensplan hier formulieren müssen. Das kommt in dem vorgelegten Dokument nicht vor. Das Zweite, ich finde, dass der Migrationsausschuss über sein Mandat hinausgegangen ist. Denn die Frage zum Beispiel der Anerkennung des Staates Palästina ist ja nicht eine Sache, die im Migrationszusammenhang zu betrachten ist, sondern das hätte der politische Ausschuss bearbeiten müssen. Auch ich bin für die Zwei-Staaten-Lösung, wie alle hier. Aber ich glaube, dass zum Beispiel die Anerkennung des Staates Palästina keinen Beitrag dazu leistet. Deswegen kritisiere ich, dass das hier in diesem Papier steht. Und das Dritte und wirklich Schockierende ist für mich, dass hier so getan wird, als stünde es fest, dass Israel einen Völkermord begeht. Es hat kein Gericht, auch nicht die Vereinten Nationen, festgestellt, dass das so ist. Wir sollten mit diesem Vorwurf sehr vorsichtig sein. Die wissenschaftliche Welt ist sehr gespalten bei der Frage, das zu bewerten. Und ich finde, wir gehen eindeutig über unsere Kompetenzen und unsere Fairness gegenüber Israel hinaus, wenn wir das hier so als feststehend definieren. Und deswegen habe ich große Probleme mit dem vorliegenden Papier. Dankeschön.
Thank you, Jürgen. Bissera Konstantinos Krysogieska. Bissera.
Thank you, Mr. President. The world has failed the 9-year-old Jana so many times, failed her on food twice. A little girl forced to endure so much pain because of deliberate decisions that were made to restrict the entry of food into the Gaza Strip. Jana was originally evacuated for treatment in southern Gaza more than a year ago, and she recovered. Once Jana was better and discharged from hospital for the first time earlier this year, she and her mother Nezma returned to northern Gaza during the ceasefire to be with her family. But the aid blockade allowed hunger to return, claiming the life of Jana's 2-year-old sister Yuri on the 20th of August this year. Her last hope, the medical evacuation out of the Gaza Strip, failed her. No country stepped up and was able to get Jana out. Jana died 5 days ago. Gazan youngster who suffered from moderate and severe acute malnutrition received ready-to-use therapeutic food, but on September 19th of this year, armed individuals approached 4 trucks outside a compound in Gaza City that were getting ready to transport the desperately needed ready-to-use therapeutic food for malnourished children enduring famine. The individuals commandeered the drivers at gunpoint and diverted the food before releasing the drivers and trucks. Hamas might come to mind immediately, but the truth is, this is an everyday occurrence where there is famine. The theft denied 2,700 severely and acutely malnourished children of life-saving food, vital supplies at a time when famine has been declared in the north of Gaza and the ongoing military operation is creating further displacement and adding to the devastating impact on children. More than 320,000 children are at risk at acute malnutrition. This war must end now. Children, mothers, and journalists on both sides must not pay the price for inactiveness and the inability to act.
Thank you so much. I have a request to my Turkish colleagues. I have 7 colleagues from Turkey, 6 are non-registered, 1 is coming from the Socialists. You know that at 1 o'clock you have an event which is about a book that the Turkish author wrote. I would kindly ask you, if of course you agree, to merge, instead of having 6 from non-registered, to have 2, for example. If you can talk to each other and you think that we could do so, just because I want most of our colleagues, if not all, to speak. So I'm going now to Valérie Piller-Garard.
Monsieur le Président, Mesdames, Messieurs, je tiens à remercier le rapporteur pour son avant-projet de résolution face à la détérioration dramatique de la situation à Gaza. Il rappelle que le ciblage délibéré de civils et la destruction d'infrastructures constituent de graves violations du droit international humanitaire. Aujourd'hui, je prends la parole pour défendre un principe essentiel à toute société juste et démocratique, le droit à l'information. Dans un monde où les images et les mots peuvent traverser les frontières en un instant, il est inconcevable qu'une région entière soit privée de la présence et du regard indépendant des médias internationaux. C'est pourtant la réalité quotidienne dans la bande de Gaza. Sans journalistes libres et indépendants sur le terrain, les civils deviennent invisibles. Les souffrances, les destructions, les gestes de solidarité et les aspirations à la paix restent confinés dans l'ombre. L'absence de couverture médiatique ne protège pas les innocents, elle les condamne au silence. Nous devons rappeler que l'accès aux médias internationaux est un droit fondamental consacré par le droit international humanitaire et les principes universels de la liberté de la presse. Là où l'information est étouffée, l'impunité prospère. Là où l'information circule, la responsabilité et la transparence deviennent possibles. Permettre aux journalistes de travailler en toute sécurité dans la bande de Gaza n'est pas une faveur, c'est un devoir pour tous les acteurs concernés. C'est un pas indispensable vers la vérité, vers la justice et à terme vers la paix. Cet appel urgent exhorte notamment la Cour pénale internationale a enquêté sur les crimes de guerre présumés commis par l'armée israélienne contre les journalistes à Gaza. Mais pour qu'elle puisse enquêter, il faut que les journalistes puissent faire leur travail maintenant et en sécurité. Sans un regard indépendant, sans la lumière des médias, le monde reste aveugle et sourd. Défendons ensemble ce droit universel, que le monde puisse voir et savoir ce qui se passe à Gaza.
Thank you, Valerie. Now it's Benjamin Dalle.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, this resolution reminds us of something essential. Without truth, there can be no accountability. In Gaza, the work of journalists is systematically obstructed. Many were killed or injured, and those who remain face impossible conditions. This lack of independent reporting fuels confusion and disinformation. By insisting on the protection of journalists and their right to work safely, this assembly underlines that facts matter. Protecting journalists is protecting truth and justice. The resolution also restates the core principles of international humanitarian law, the protection of civilians, unhindered humanitarian access, the release of hostages. These principles are not optional, and it is crystal clear that Israel continues to violate international law and international humanitarian law on a massive scale, and that despite repeated calls, including from this assembly, to respect these principles. On the very sensitive issue of genocide, personally, I believe the risk is very real and well documented. But as an institution, I would suggest to follow the same line as UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He has stressed that legal determination of genocide is the competence of the International Court of Justice, which is already seized of the case. But what matters most, dear colleagues, is that the reality in Gaza, mass civilian suffering, destruction, famine, displacement and killings, is morally and legally unacceptable and should stop immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Zeynep Yildiz.
President, dear colleagues, with its relentless violations, Israel continues to defy the international law, international humanitarian law, and the global human rights framework with unprecedented audacity. 77 years have passed since the Nakba. Just 3 days ago marked the 25th anniversary of killing of Mohammed al-Dura in the arms of his father. It has been 22 years since Rachel Corrie was tragically crushed by Israeli bulldozers, and 15 years since Furkan Doğan was murdered in international waters on the Mavi Marmara flotilla, which carried toys for children of Gaza. Just 2 days ago, Yahya Berzak, a journalist for TRT in Gaza, was killed by Israel. Every moment, the international community hesitated or failed to hold Israel accountable only brazened its cruelty further. Last night, Israel attacked the Smut flotilla in international waters. The activists, our friends, were kidnapped by Israel. Every act of aggression and legal violation of Israel that went unanswered by international community laid the genocide we are witnessing today. That's for sure. It's no longer enough to speak because we are ashamed of still being in the phase of just talking. It's imperative that we act. After Israel's declaration of full occupation of Gaza 3 weeks ago, we went Rafah border, 0 point of Gaza, with our colleagues to emphasize Gazan people are not alone. While individual efforts matter, we must now mobilize a collective response that produces concrete results. We must intensify parliamentary diplomacy to politically and economically isolate Israel, strengthen the role of United Nations to ensure humanitarian aid reaches Gaza, and advocate for establishment of international fund to rebuild Gaza for only the people of Gaza. A Turkish poet once said, "It's indelible crime of living upon me, unable to prevent a genocide unfolding before our eyes, is a crime of living that we all must bear."
Max Lux is next.
Once again,
Zeynep, sorry, I have to interrupt you.
The mood of Gazan people. Thank you very much.
Max Lux. Max, have you inserted your badge? Have you inserted your badge? No. Sure.
Now? Yes. Please
that is why I always ask for your badge when you enter the room, because we need like 30 seconds for the mic to coordinate with your badge. Thank you.
Please allow me to continue in German. Dankeschön, Herr Präsident, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren. Ich bin in einer Hinsicht etwas irritiert über unsere Debatte hier. Ich habe bei einigen Redebeiträgen den Eindruck, es geht nicht um die Menschen in Gaza, sondern um uns selbst. Hier wird dann wahlweise der irische Unabhängigkeitskampf oder die britische Kriegsführung im Zweiten Weltkrieg angesprochen. Aber diese Debatte über uns selbst wird der fürchterlichen Lage für die Geiseln in den Tunnel der Hamas, für die unschuldigen Kinder in Gaza, für die Menschen, die in Gaza gegen die Hamas demonstrieren, die in Israel gegen die Regierung von Netanyahu demonstrieren. Diese Debatte wird diesen Menschen nicht gerecht. Und Frau Yildiz, ich habe Ihnen sehr aufmerksam zugehört. Aber ich muss schon sagen, bei den engen Kanälen, die die türkische Regierung, die ihre Partei zur Hamas hat, warum tun Sie denn nicht alles in der Welt dafür, dass die Hamas den Friedensplan annimmt, damit das Sterben dort aufhört? Genauso wie ich als Mitglied des Deutschen Bundestages alles dafür tue, dass meine deutsche Bundesregierung eine härtere Gangart gegenüber der rechtsextremen Regierung von Netanyahu an den Tag legt. Genauso erwarte ich von Ihnen, alles zu tun, was in Ihrer Macht steht. Meine Damen und Herren, wir sind hier nicht bei einem Fußballspiel, wo man sich eine Seite aussucht, auf der man steht, und dann tritt man dafür ein. Sondern wir müssen doch Lösungen finden. Wir haben Israel und die palästinensischen Gebiete hier als Beobachter. Und deswegen ist es auch unsere Verantwortung, dass wir keine nachhaltige Lösung bisher vorgelegt haben und formuliert haben. Und das ist doch das, woran wir alle gemeinsam über alle Grenzen hier hinweg arbeiten müssen, an dem gemeinsamen Ziel, dass das Sterben dort aufhört. Sowohl die Hamas als auch Netanyahu wollen den Menschen dort die Hoffnung auf Frieden nehmen. Geben wir diesen Menschen gemeinsam Hoffnung auf Frieden. Herzlichen Dank.
Thank you, Max. Dimitrios Mantzos. Dimitri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gaza is being razed to the ground. Palestinians are being forcibly displaced. Civilians and even children are dying under bombardments and famine. Humanitarian aid has been systematically obstructed and now cut off altogether. Even ships carrying humanitarian supplies are seized in international waters in severe violation of the law of the sea. In the West Bank, Israeli settlements are being expanded. Even journalists have been victims of persecution and violence. At the same time, the hostages of Hamas remain in captivity. peace and stability seem farther away than ever. And yet, we as Europe, as the international community, cannot remain silent. We must act. We must do something that ought to be self-evident and yet seems paradoxically difficult: to respect international organizations and international justice, international law itself. We must work tirelessly towards the only just and viable solution, the two-state solution. Just as we demand the application of international law in the case of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, or in Cyprus, 51 years after Turkey's military invasion, so we must also do in Palestine. There can be no double standards in international law. The recognition of the State of Palestine ensures the implementation of the United Nations resolutions. It is part of a broader diplomatic effort for mutual recognition and for a democratic transition in Palestine. Let us be honest, no agreement can succeed unless it leads to a two-state solution. There is no other path to peace and stability. If we want to break the vicious circle of violence, terrorism, radicalism, and nationalism, we must follow the only road that remains open, the road of peaceful and harmonious coexistence of two peoples, Israelis and Palestinians, side by side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitris. Murat Sahid Singh.
Distinguished colleagues, Gaza faces an unimaginable humanitarian crisis. Hundreds of thousands of civilians endure relentless violence, displacement, and lack of necessities. Yet, courageous journalists risk everything to make sure the world sees and records this cruelty. However, mafia state Israel doesn't allow journalists to carry out their job and stop them unlawfully. Since October 2023, according to the UN figures, at least 248 journalists and media workers have been killed in Gaza. Countless journalists still remain imprisoned in Israeli jails. Journalists protected under international law are being hunted, silenced, and killed systematically and intentionally. We have seen the evidences: cameras buried in rubble, press vests drenched in blood, entire families of journalists killed in their homes. Silence the journalists and hide the suffering of the Palestinian people. This is precisely a war crime. Journalists gave their lives to show the human cost of this war. Israel seeks to suppress that truth, to erase the records of its violations. The world has condemned these attacks fiercely, yet killing and intimidation persist, as it was just shown again through the assault of Israel to the smooth flotilla, which carries humanity to Palestinian women and children. Colleagues, freedom of the press and protection of civilians are universal rules. Each murdered journalist is a war crime from which Israel must be held accountable. We cannot bring the deceased persons back, but at least make their souls rest in peace by calling Israel to account in front of international courts.
Thank you, Murat Sahid.
God bless all of them.
Thank you. George Lukaidis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, I ask you to imagine one unbearable image. Every single day, for 2 years, a classroom in your country, I repeat, in your country, filled with children and then killed. Day after day. If these were your children, your language on the blackboard, your families on the door, would any of us hesitate to name the crime or the perpetrator? This is Gaza. a hell on earth. 2 years of deliberate starvation confirmed by the United Nations. 2 years of relentless bombardments on hospitals, schools, places of worship, refugee camps, and so on. 2 years of killing 8 workers and hundreds of journalists, almost 250, while international media are denied entry. These are not accusations. They are documented realities. That's why those who actively support Israel with political, military, and economic means, namely the United States, European Union, and certain member states, are complicit. And those who choose silence or turn a blind eye share the same responsibility. Neutrality in the face of atrocity is not neutrality, it is complicity. But we must face another uncomfortable truth. Never in any of these Assembly resolutions on Gaza or the West Bank have we used the word condemnation for Israel's crimes. By contrast, we rightly condemned Hamas atrocities immediately and unequivocally. These double standards undermines our credibility and emboldens Israel to continue a genocide unfolding in plain sight. Our duty is not only speak, but to act. Member states must impose a comprehensive arms embargo, suspend the EU-Israel Association Agreement, enforce international court rulings, and guarantee unrestricted humanitarian
Thank you, George.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Jackson.
Dear colleagues, last night Israel intervened in the Sumut flotilla in international waters. Tens of thousands of people have been killed in Palestine, many of them women and children. There's no access to clean water, no food, no medical care, no schools, no hospital, no energy. And the journalists who could have shown the world what is really happening, they have been targeted too. Dear colleagues, this is not a natural disaster. Humanitarian crisis did not happen by itself, so there's a perpetrator. Let's be honest, if governments and international community had acted sooner, none of this would have happened. The Sumut flotilla, the young people and activists risking their lives, there's a powerful message in that, and we should all learn from it. Because when states and institutions fall short, the conscience of humanity steps in. When activists set sail, it is not just a protest, it is a cry for help that says, this is not acceptable. When a whole country is under occupation, when even its children are labeled as terrorists, we need to question everything we think is normal. We should act now against this genocide, call all member states to officially recognize the state of Palestine, call for an end of trade deals with the Israeli government, call for an end of occupation of Palestine, and condemn Israeli attack against Sumut flotilla. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ursula Kanat is next.
Israel shows no restraint in Gaza. Indiscriminate bombings, obstruction of aid, killing of journalists, UN staff, and human rights defenders, alongside relentless expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank. This is also a war on truth. International journalists are banned, forcing Palestinian reporters starving, displaced, grieving to document their own destruction. Israel killed 246 journalists, often in their homes with their families, deliberately silenced before bombs destroyed their neighborhoods. This is not collateral damage, dear colleagues. It is the execution of witnesses. Just last night, Israel intercepted the Sumut flotilla, civilian vessels carrying food and medicine, where governments have failed. To attack such a mission of mercy is not defense. It is an assault on humanity. We demand the immediate release of detained passengers. Let's be clear. This war is not about Israel's security. It is about uprooting Palestinians from their land once again, the continuation of decades of illegal occupation and dispossession. This assembly can no longer hide behind double standards. No, this is not a football match. This is genocide. Those who ignore Israel's war crimes and still supply arms have buried their credibility to ever speak of human rights alongside the bodies of 20,000 children murdered in Gaza. What moral authority remains after such shameful silence? Silence is not neutrality. Silence is complicity. Any genuine plan for peace is welcome, but whatever its fate, international law is clear. States and institutions must act now to end atrocities, to allow aid, and to ensure accountability. No plan can replace these obligations. This resolution doesn't deliver all that justice demands. No sanctions, no arms embargo, no suspension of observer status, no end to the occupation. Yet I will support it, because in the face of genocide, an imperfect stand is still better than perfect silence. There isn't one country in this assembly, dear colleagues, that has worked more for the peace in the Middle East than Turkey. Thank you.
Peran Moon.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're thankful that in most of Europe, journalists play a normal role upholding democracy, free speech and scrutiny. In Gaza, life is a million miles away from normal. Journalists are required to fulfill a very different, profoundly more perilous role. The death of over 200 journalists is especially horrifying, as some appear to have been targeted by the Israeli Defense Force. Astonishingly, as has been mentioned previously, more journalists have been killed in Gaza since the invasion began than in the American Civil War, World Wars I and II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, the wars in Yugoslavia, and the post-9/11 war in Afghanistan combined. The absence of journalists creates a vacuum for war crimes to go unreported. On the 21st of August, the United Kingdom, alongside 28 other countries, signed a statement by the Media Freedom Coalition, urging the Israeli government to allow immediate independent foreign media access and to afford protection to those journalists operating in Gaza. Let me be clear. The actions of the Israeli government in Gaza and the West Bank are not just morally indefensible, they are criminal. They demand action, and I'm deeply concerned by the arrest of humanitarians on the flotilla heading to relieve suffering in Gaza. We must call on the Israeli people themselves, many of whom are appalled by what is happening in their name, to demand an end to the attacks. This is not a moment for timidity. It's a moment for clarity, courage and compassion. We need to see an immediate end to the ceasefire, the release of the hostages, protection of civilians, including journalists, a massive aid intervention and a path to long-term peace and a two-state solution. To that end, I'm delighted that on the 21st of September, the United Kingdom Prime Minister announced that the UK has formally recognised the State of Palestine. But the voices of journalists who record the horrors, as well as the moments of humanity amidst the conflict, must always be heard.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peran. Stefan Senna. Stefan? Is Stefan Senna here? No. Tony Morgan.
President, I would first like to thank Lord German for his comprehensive and urgent report on the devastating humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. 2 years have passed since the appalling terrorist attacks of the 7th of October 2023. The taking of hostages and killing of innocent civilians was a war crime and an abhorrent act that cannot be justified. But Israel's response has been grossly disproportionate, has collectively punished the Palestinian people, and has created an unprecedented humanitarian emergency that shames the world. Over 65,000 Palestinians have been killed, including more than 17,000 children. Famine has been recognised in Gaza City by international bodies. The growing international recognition of Palestinian statehood by several Council of Europe member states, including the UK, reflects our collective understanding that a political solution is the only solution. And with 157 of 193 UN member states officially recognising the state of Palestine, there is a growing consensus that you cannot have a two-state solution without a Palestinian state. As Lord German said, the International Court of Justice ruled in January 2024 that Israel must ensure humanitarian assistance reaches Palestinians in Gaza, and I quote, in order to protect the right of Palestinians in Gaza to be protected from acts of genocide. Yet Israel has systematically flouted the court's orders and dismantled aid infrastructure. And we do not have to be a court of justice to see that evidence of genocide has mounted significantly since then. The UN Commission of Inquiry concluded in September this year that Israel has committed 4 of the 5 genocidal acts defined under international law. Now, it is important that this Assembly reaffirms the importance of international judicial mechanisms to address these issues, and I completely disagree that these uncontestable matters and statements of basic international law should be deleted from the resolution. But I support the recommendations of the rapporteur's report and add that the protection of journalists who have been killed in unprecedented numbers has to stop.
I know, thank you, Tony. I know that the 4 colleagues who are last in this list, Mustafa Sanbey, Kate Osborne, Abdurrahman Babachan, and Semaheddin Kani-Torun, will not like me anymore, but I cannot do anything, sorry. We have to conclude the list of speakers here. I have asked many times to be in time, and I'm really sorry that these 4 colleagues did not have the ability to take the floor. But you can give to the table office for publication your speeches. Dear colleagues, that concludes the list of speakers. I call Lord German, Rapporteur, to reply. You have 3 minutes, and if you can do it even in less time, it will be much appreciated. Thank you. We cannot hear you.
No.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've listened very carefully to every single speech that's been made here, and I think that there is a huge amount on which we all agree. I've listed here these things which no one has either spoken against or people have spoken for, and I think this is the sense that I get from this debate. An immediate ceasefire, openness for journalists, condemnation of Hamas, return of the hostages, allowance of the aid entrance into the country, upholding international law. Interesting, because, of course, there are some people who would say some of the international laws we don't want to listen to, so be very careful. It's not just the ones that suit your case. And finally, that the desire for peace. And that desire for peace, which I think is in everybody's mind, is the one which we must make sure that we take forward, because there is no other option but for a solution to be found in order to provide that peace for a genuine long term. I'm grateful for everyone who has spoken, and I'm sure we'll have a few more minutes of extra debate on other matters in a moment.
Does the chairperson of the committee wish to speak, Alexei?
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted as many people to speak in the debates as possible, so I will be super short. I just want to thank our committee because it was a difficult debate, believe me. What you hear here, it's not even what we had at the committee. It was difficult. It is a very hot topic. I need to tell you why there were no Israeli representatives today in debates. Today is Yom Kippur. My congratulations to everybody who are celebrating this Jewish holiday. So unfortunately, they couldn't join us. So thank you very much to Secretariat, to our committee. We did what we can. My personal position I will express by my voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. The Committee on Migration, Refugees and Displaced Persons has presented a draft resolution, document 16. Yes, Mr. Hispan, would you like to say?
I want to challenge the report and ask to send back to the committee.
So Mr. Hispan has said that he wants to challenge the report, be referred back to the committee. This motion can be agreed on a simple majority. On this motion, only the proposer, one speaker against, and the rapporteur or chairperson concerned may be heard. The proposer has already spoken. Does anyone apart from the rapporteur or the chairperson wish to oppose this?
He needs to explain.
You need to explain.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you, President. In this report that comes from the Migration Committee that should have been about the humanitarian crisis and journalists, we have had a passionate debate about genocide, a question that belongs to the Legal Affairs Committee that has not been taken on account, about flotilla, a question of the Political Committee without listening to the committee, or about 2 states without listening to the Special Reporter of the Middle East that is here. We can debate about genocide, the flotilla, or the two states, but through the appropriate committees. The Assembly is the house of the debates, but especially us, that we require a lot of states that the reform of laws and constitutions should be done through the appropriate ways, because democracy is a question of procedures. We must be very picky for ourselves. These are the standards that we require to others and that we are not going to accomplish today.
Thank you.
The split of the Assembly is not a good idea. Let's debate about those extremely serious and sensitive issues.
Your argument has been heard, dear Pablo.
Through the appropriate committees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who wishes to speak against? Mr. Begits.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will say that we are against this because this is just state facts in this report, just talking about what others have said, and this is the report on journalists and children suffering in Gaza. That's why we want to vote today.
Thank you. Lord German, what is your opinion as a rapporteur? Can you press the button? Can you press the button?
It's okay. It's okay. I would reject the reference back on the grounds that this was an urgent debate, and it was one which we wanted to deal with this week. It was the decision of the Bureau, and we have tried and done our very best to try and address all the issues which people have spoken about. There are, of course, more debate to go on, but it does seem to me that we would throw out from the discussion at this very important time all those issues which people have spoken in favour of, which I listed earlier on.
Thank you, Lord German. And the procedure goes as such. The Assembly will now vote on the motion to refer document number 16273 back to the committee. As I said earlier, a simple majority is required. The vote is open. The vote is closed. The motion is rejected. The Committee on Migration, Refugees and Displaced Persons has presented a draft resolution, document 16273, to which 3 amendments have been tabled. They will be taken in the order in which they appear in the compendium. I remind you that speeches on amendments are limited to 30 seconds. I understand that the chairperson of the committee wishes to propose to the Assembly that Amendment 2 to the draft resolution, which was rejected by the committee with a 2/3 majority, be declared as definitely rejected. Is that so, Alexi? Yes. Thank you. If no objections, I will consider the amendment to be rejected. Is there an objection? No. So, I call now Pablo Hispan to support amendment number 3. You have 30 seconds. Who is going to support it, Pablo?
I'm against that Amendment 1 is rejected. I'm for.
No, it's number 3, amendment number 3.
Yeah.
If you want, you can support it in 30 seconds.
Yeah. Sorry, then I misunderstood Amendment 1 and Amendment. I'm sorry.
Is anyone going to speak against? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm against this because we don't know what is signed and what Israeli agrees on this amendment. So we have to state our vote on the fact. So fact is that we don't know. So we are against this amendment.
What is the opinion of the committee? Alexi?
Committee is against this amendment with simple majority. Thank you.
Okay, I shall now put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. The amendment is rejected. Now we speak about amendment number 1. I will call Emanuele Zingeris to support amendment number 1. You have 30 seconds.
A crucial remark about genocide, and it's a footnote to the so-called United Nations Human Rights Council created by such members like Cuba, Sudan, and other guys who are absolutely not based on bias. So in this case, it's essence of the report, and please, after that debate, who were supported a lot of points, please don't stop the peace process and reject the words genocide. It's not true. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against? Mr. Begic.
Thank you. This is, as already explained by Lord German, just a state of fact. So we are against this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Begic. What's the opinion of the committee on the amendment? Alexei?
Committee is against this amendment with simple majority. Thank you.
Thank you. I shall now put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. Amendment 1 is rejected. I have received an oral amendment from Lord German, Rapporteur, which reads as follows. In paragraph 23.1, after acts of harassment against it and insert is concerned by the boarding and arrest of the crew by Israel. The President may accept, as you know, an oral amendment on the grounds of promoting clarity, accuracy, or conciliation, and if there is not opposition from 10 or more members to be debated. In my opinion, the oral amendment meets the criteria of Rule 34.7, paragraph A. Any opposition to this amendment? Yes, Mr. Hispan.
This amendment goes very far of the scope.
Sorry, Pablo, it's my mistake. We need 10 members to object by standing up.
Against, no, to speak up, no, sorry, no.
No, we just need 10 members to object by standing up. And then you can put your argumentation. So this is not the case. We will therefore proceed to the next amendment.
To the oral amendment?
Sorry, to the oral amendment.
And we Chairman.
Yes, excuse me, dear colleagues, don't be angry. I said it twice, that you have to stand up, and you didn't. What do you expect me to do, to stay here till night? Okay, you may sit. Dear Mr. Hispan, you have the floor to explain.
This amendment goes very far away of the scope of this report. This report is about the humanitarian crisis, not a political crisis, not about political activists. So this amendment should be rejected because this report is about humanitarian and journalists, not political activists.
People objected.
Okay, there were 10 people who objected, so as I'm informed by the Secretary General, there's no need to vote. We will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution contained in document 16273 as amended. A simple majority is required. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the result to be displayed. The draft resolution in document 16273 as amended is adopted. I want to thank all colleagues who had participated in this crucial debate. I want to thank the interpreters for staying with us more than the time limit. The Assembly will hold its next public sitting this afternoon at 4 p.m. on the basis of the agenda agreed on Monday. The sitting is adjourned.